AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
7:30 on this Monday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. This is the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. We're with you every single weekday morning. You can get us on YouTube or Periscope or on the OTB Sports app. And we're on air until 10 o'clock every morning. It is Owen Sheehan here in studio, and beaming in live from the west of Ireland is Tommy Rooney. Good morning to you, Tommy.
Owen Sheehan, how you doing?
Good. It is a big day for you and I because it is the championship draws. They begin in the GAA front of things. We're going to have the first draw in the next few minutes. We're going to have another draw in about an hour's time. We will keep you up to speed on all of that. But there's only one place we can start this morning, Tommy. We're going to have coverage of this across the morning. The football family across the world is united in anger. The European Breakaway League, which has been officially called the SuperLeague by those super clubs involved in it. They came out last night after 11 o'clock Irish time to release a statement. Conveniently enough, after 11 o'clock Irish time, I would say. It's not really carried in any of the papers as a result. Way too late for a lot of the continental newspapers this morning as well. All the big hitters of European football came together in the statement. Your Agnellis, your Perez's, your Glazers, all of them came together. Andrea Agnelli spoke about 12 founder clubs representing billions of fans across the globe. You had Joel Glazer saying that they will have increased financial support for the football pyramid, and Florentino Perez says we will help football at every level. The Super League is here, Tommy, and it looks like there's going to be one hell of a legal battle. There's going to be one hell of a battle for the souls of football fans all around the continent, because this thing is causing massive ructions.
Yeah, there's going to be war in football. And, like, look, we're probably lucky that there's no Super 8s this year. And now, out of nowhere, they've found a way to replace it. The European Super League. Like, there's been talk about this for so long on that, like, it never actually seemed it would ever become a reality. And even yesterday evening, when you were watching Sky Sports and there was that, pretty poor first half between Manchester United and Burnley, it was hard to keep your eye on the football. You were looking at seeing what people were saying. And I was thinking, oh, look, this is probably just a power move ahead of the Champions League reformat that's happening today. But, like, what happened last night, you're starting to think, right, is this really going to happen in the next, 18 months, 2 years? One thing that I found interesting yesterday, yes, you've got Joe Glazer and you've got Agnelli quoted in the statement last night from the Super League clubs. You've also got Florentino Perez, who by all accounts seem to have been leading it. But there's no word from John Henry in Liverpool. A lot of Liverpool fans are pointing out the fact that their club website is carrying a statement from Joe Glazer, but it's got nothing from their own chairman. Spurs tweeted it last night. They got a bit of a stick for putting out on Twitter. Spurs have had a couple of gaffes on Twitter the last couple of days. Arsenal, who drew 1-1 with Fulham yesterday afternoon, tweeted, yes, we are one of the founding members of the European Super League. But there hasn't been a single tweet from the Manchester United Twitter account. Why is that? I don't get that. Why haven't they come out and backed this? Do you know, is there going to be division amongst clubs themselves, never mind amongst people within football? There's a terribly interesting couple of days ahead.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point you make, and people were making that point yesterday when they were listening to Gary Neville, saying, is Gary Neville that connected to the football club if he didn't even know this was coming before yesterday, or maybe he didn't let on that he knew more than he did. Whatever the case may be, there's going to be a lot of curious interpolitical things. You look at the Agnelli situation, for example. He's had one hell of a 24 hours. So he has resigned as president of the ECA, and he's also walked away from a seat on the UEFA Executive Committee. He was supposed to show up to the UEFA Executive Committee meeting this morning to pitch the new Champions League format, which was supposed to be his thing. What the hell was that all about? And then Juventus have also left the ECA. The ECA is a complete joke of an organisation as far as they're concerned, but that suits the Super League as well. A lot of this is pulling away at the fabric of very important things that are to do with European club football. But the Super League wants to dismantle European club football and come along with its new model. So these are all little fascinating elements to it. We should actually listen to what Gary Neville had to say yesterday, because what he had to say was explosive. It was brilliant stuff, no matter what sort of hypocrisy you want to point to in this. It was really strong stuff from Neville on Sky Sports yesterday. Have a listen to this.
Well, you know what the motivation is? It's greed. Dave, my reaction earlier on wasn't an emotional reaction. Deduct them all points tomorrow, put them at the bottom of the league and take the money off them. Seriously, you have got to stamp on this. It's criminal. It's a criminal act against football fans in this country. Make no mistake about it. This is the biggest sport in the world. This is the biggest sport in this country, and it's a criminal act against the fans. Simple as that. Deduct points, deduct their money, and punish them.
Like, I mean, I agree with everything Neville had to say yesterday. Part of me, though, Tommy, is a little bit surprised that there seems to be a tone of surprise around this whole thing, as if people are shocked that those who run football clubs at the very top level, especially in England, like, didn't have this in them, that they cared a lot about the community. Michael Richards on Sky Sports yesterday talking about how Manchester City have done a lot for the community of Manchester. Does he really think that all the investment that the City Group have ploughed into the city of Manchester wasn't for their own good, wasn't to keep the people of Manchester sweet, wasn't to keep them on side, so that maybe one day if something like this came along, they would have all the power and they would have all the capital of the supporters to actually go out and do something like this? I'm surprised that people are surprised. I'm surprised that people are surprised that the Glazers would do something like this, that Stan Kroenke would do something like this, that Henry and FSG would do something like this, because they didn't get involved in football for the sake of community spirit, for the sake of Manchester United playing Burnley. They got involved in football for money, and as it stands, they just are not making enough money at the moment. 3.5 billion euro is going to be shared amongst the founding member clubs of this. If you're looking for a reason why this is happening, that is it. A fantastic account to follow whenever these stories come up is Swiss Ramble, and he made the valid point yesterday that the 12 founder members, they lost a combined £1.2 billion in the 2019-20 season before player sales. That was a season where only 3 months were impacted by COVID, so the majority of it was a normal season. They still lost a combined £1.2 billion, and those figures don't even include Liverpool. So that's 11 out of the 12 clubs. That is why this is happening. They feel that they're not making enough money, and 3.5 billion euro to be shared between the 12 of them should probably put that right. And that is why this is going to be a very hard thing to stop. What will happen now is that they are going to try and brighten this scenario by saying that they will support the football family, and there will be annual solidarity payments of 434 million euro per year to the European football pyramid. Think of the tons and tons of clubs that 434 million euro will go to, compared to the 3.5 billion euro that will be shared between the 12 clubs. Gary Neville is bang on, regardless of if you call him a hypocrite or not with Salford and all that sort of thing. He's bang on. This is all about greed.
Listen, but like, in a capitalist world, when has enough money ever been enough? It's about power, it's about money, and I completely get what you're saying. Like, how can anyone be surprised this is happening? I'd say, in one sense, this came out of the absolute blue in a lot of ways. Sure, there's been talking, there's been rumours about it, but this is like, there was a brilliant line written yesterday how they just, this has been planted for a long time, and they just picked a moment to come out yesterday afternoon. On Gary Neville, he was incredibly strong. Like, for once, Roy Keane kind of just said, listen, Gary said it all. I completely agree with what Gary has said. And didn't really have too much to add apart from what Neville had said himself. Keane was kind of saying that he expects Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to come out and make a statement. And Mika put it back on him, saying surely it's not Ole's responsibility, it's the owners of the club. But Roy was quite strong in that. He said, no, Ole should have something to say. You know, he loves Manchester United, he loves his club. He should come out and say something. Is Solskjaer going to come out and speak against his owners, against his club? Is Jurgen Klopp, who in 2019 said that he hopes that there's never a Super League, that he's happy with the way that the Champions League format and the Europa League has gone, is Jurgen Klopp going to come out and say that John Henry and FSG are a disgrace for going for this? You know, Henry's on the record before for saying that, you know, they're going to listen to the fans, and Liverpool are this club that stand for so much. Barcelona are this club that stand for so much. You know, never mind your Manchester Cities, who are new money and are state-backed clubs from countries that do have, you know, suspect histories and human rights cases. Like, never mind that. It's the other clubs. It's the clubs with the history. It's the clubs that are owned by the American owners that are really letting themselves down, and their fans down here as well. Kind of time,
but I would actually counter that by saying you don't need to have a bad record of human rights to be unbelievably greedy, and it's not exclusive to the Manchester City group. One of my favourite kind of conversations that's existed around this is people online saying newfound respect for Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich after all of this, which is just hilarious. Like, first of all, Bayern Munich can't really do anything on this. What is it? You have to be owned by 51% fans when it comes to Germany's league, to the Germany league. Like, you can't actually make some sort of independent decision based on being a megalomaniac, for example, in Germany. So that's going to put the halt on you right away to join this European Super League. But Paris Saint-Germain, well, they've got a whole other political element going on where they need to keep the governors of football sweet for the next couple of years. They're hosting a fairly important competition at the end of next year, the owners of Paris Saint-Germain, and keeping FIFA on side for that is a necessary thing. Now, the FIFA element of this is going to be fascinating because it did seem that FIFA were against this, that they were willing to ban people from the World Cup, for example, if they were involved in the European Super League. Their statement came out very late last night as well, and there is a sense that if one big governing body might do a U-turn on all of this and actually come to the support of it, it might actually be FIFA. UEFA, obviously, are totally against this because the biggest thing that is under threat here, if not just domestic football, it is Champions League football. That is dead, and as we know it, because this is going to be a midweek league. They're saying that they want the domestic leagues to continue at the weekend. So you can maybe see a world where they coexist. You cannot see a world where UEFA are happy with this whatsoever. They are the biggest losers from this. One other thing then to just mention on this was the idea, kind of coming back to what you were saying about what these clubs are all about. Like, Yana Fjortoft on Twitter yesterday said, these billionaires are not the real owners of the clubs. The owners are the fans. The official owners' main jobs are to manage the history and legacy of many generations of fans, players and staff. I really want to agree with what Fjortoft is saying there, but it's a fanciful notion to say that the owners are the fans when it comes to British football and when it comes to Spanish and Italian football. They are not the fans, or they're not the owners. The billionaires are the owners. That is not a nice situation to be in. I wish it wasn't the case, but I do feel that there is a lack of reality going on when people are analysing the situation, as if people think that fans actually matter. We've just had, 9 months, Tommy, of football without fans? And like, television money might dip next season, but it's not going to be dramatically different. Football has proven that it can exist completely independent of fans. There will be widespread protest of this, and it should change something. But we've just seen cavernous, empty stadiums host some brilliant games over the past couple of months. Football has disassociated itself with its heart and soul a long time ago, and it has disassociated itself from its own fans pretty well over the last 9 months. So if you think that it will suddenly find its soul over the next little while, I just think that's quite a fanciful notion.
Just quickly, and I know you got David Meyler coming up very quickly, are the Super League clubs bridging or banking on the fact that they've obviously developed their brand so much in countries like Asia and China and even America, all around the world? You know, Manchester United have fans in every single country in the world, and they always speak about their worldwide brand awareness. Are they banking on the fact that they'll have a generation of football fans who've grown up watching footballers on YouTube or watching clips on Twitter or playing FIFA Ultimate Team? Like, is that what they're hoping here? That the fans, you know, sure enough, the ones who live in England or who have supported their clubs for years aren't going to be happy with it. But are the new generation of football fans going to be like, wow, this is amazing. Give me some of this. I want to see, you know, Mbappe versus Haaland every second week on a Wednesday night, and then at the weekends, whatever happens, I don't know. The other quick thing is, would the Premier League end up being more competitive? Would it end up being better if, you know, these clubs were to break away? Like, if these players are going to be banned from playing international football, there's still, look, you've David Meyler coming up, you've Tariq Panja coming up. There's so much you get into here, and I know we're going to come back to the Munster football draw. Are we going to mention who Kerry have?
Go for it, Tommy.
So Owen, the Munster Senior Football Championship semi-final draw has pitted Tipperary in the Munster semi-final, last year's winners, against either Clare or Kerry. So Kerry have Clare up first in the Munster quarter-final, and on the other side of the draw, Cork are playing the winners of Waterford and Limerick. So if you want to get a crack at another Munster final, you're going to have to beat Tipperary, beat Clare, and beat Cork to get there.
Toughest possible draw, Tommy. I mean, being drawn with Cork would have been the easy draw there. Tipperary, of course, Munster champions. Let us not lose sight of that fact. The best team in Munster at the moment. So Kerry on the same side of the draw as Tip at the moment. So could be another Tip Cork Munster final, could be Tip Limerick. Munster final could be Clare Limerick, could be any of those combinations. That is the first of, 6 provincial draws over the course of the next few days. We're going to bring you the Munster hurling draw, I understand, Tommy, a little bit later on at around 8:30 this morning. So keep with us here and we'll bring you that as soon as we get it. Let's tell you what's coming up this morning on OTB AM. We've got David Meyler, as Tommy said, on standby to give his thoughts on the European Super League, and there was actual football at the weekend as well, which we will discuss too. Tariq Panja of the New York Times is going to be with us at 8:10 to get into the nitty-gritty of this. This is a fascinating political story as much as anything else. What's happened over the last 24 hours has been incredible, and he will take us through all of it. His work for the New York Times on the subject has been brilliant. Sports Pages coming your way at 8:30 this morning, and then Alan Quinlan will be reflecting on Ireland's defeat to France on Saturday at 8:45. The GAA draw and the latest from the Munster Hurling Championship coming your way at 9 o'clock. And then the performance rankings at 9:10, and then some more OTB reaction to the weekend's football coming your way at 9:30. Right, at 7:46 on this Monday morning, I should say, you're watching OTB AM, and we're live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. David Meyler, good morning.
Good morning, lads.
What was your first reaction when you saw yesterday that this thing might be a reality, that the European Super League might become a thing as soon as August?
I thought it was a disgrace, shambles. Obviously they're talking about, doing this, the founding 12 teams or whatever, and then they're basically untouchable. So whatever happens to them, this, Super League happens, that if those 12 teams, lose all their games, they can't be relegated. There's just no buzz to it. I really do hope that the Premier League kick them out, UEFA banned them and all that. I think it's a disgrace, to be honest.
Can I ask, how do you feel as a Liverpool fan?
Say it again, sorry?
How do you feel as a Liverpool fan?
You're disgusted. Liverpool is a club that's, built on its tradition, its history, the great success. It's kind of like, the people's club in a way. The amount of Liverpool fans that rally around the club, the motto, you'll never walk alone, and all this. And it just seems that, certainly with the Liverpool owner, of course he's American, they're kind of going for this, the NFL franchise, what they're trying to do. It's just pure greed. And it's unbelievable. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the whole thing. I'm flabbergasted by the whole lot. It's the same. It's not just Liverpool though, it's Manchester United, and then Gary Neville makes, wonderful points. He talks about it, Liverpool and Manchester United are the two biggest clubs in the UK. And, the history that they have throughout, their footballing times. It's just a shame that it's just come pure money and it's greed. It's remarkable.
In some ways, is it a little bit naive to think that Manchester United still had that connection to what football should be about in England? Did we underplay the importance of the Glazers and the owners at Liverpool and the owners at Arsenal, and how much they actually just make the decision? It doesn't matter if at grassroots level you're tapping into every element of London, for example, if you're Arsenal. All that matters is who is the biggest majority shareholder and what he kind of wants to do when he flashes his cash.
No, definitely. It just seems that they don't care what the fans think, what the people of the local areas, they just care about, making money. Of course, there's been the numbers thrown around, I believe each team will get 300, 350 million. You're talking about, the Premier League's only worth 150, Champions League's worth 110, that just trying to monopolise it where they can control it. Of course, look, they're unhappy with UEFA, stuff like that. It just shows that that's the way it is. They just see it straight and strictly as a business. They're trying to grow. Like I heard you there speaking a minute ago to Tommy, talking about, might have been Tommy brought up, they really are trying to tap into these foreign markets. They're just kind of forgetting about, the loyal fans who go to the games week in, week out, and who travel home and away, travel across Europe, for the Champions League or the Europa League. They're forgetting about those fellas. They're trying to tap into these markets in the Asia and whatever to try and build this Super League where you get to watch all the best players playing all the time. But I feel it's going to fall on deaf ears eventually.
The thing that would worry me about that, David, is the fact that they've managed to exist for so long without fans. Granted, a lot of clubs are making losses at the moment, but they've proven over the last 9 months that they don't actually need fans. Football, they can exist in empty stadiums. If football loses complete touch with its own community, you can see people travelling from all over the world to go to Anfield, to go to Old Trafford, and to put their bums in seats regardless. It's just going to be a different background to the people who are actually showing up. And ultimately, that is all that matters to those people who run these clubs, that they get their match day revenues. It doesn't matter where that money is coming from.
Yeah, but isn't that, oh, and that's wrong, like, because
Yeah.
it should be about the history and the fans that, like, you know, I remember as a young boy going over to Anfield to watch games in the Premier League or the Champions League, my dad bringing me over. That was the buzz of it, you know. You can't lose sight of that. That's the history of the club. You know, you can't just abandon everything that's, you know, come before and then just focus on this, you know, Super League and, you know, just, like I said a while ago, monopolize it and just think that it's just us and we can control it. You know, with you see the board that they're talking about for the Super League with Perez from Real Madrid. You're looking at Henry, Glazer, and all those. It's ridiculous. It really is.
Yeah, like, I mean, that is it really, isn't it? That identity that you would have had with the football club growing up, going over to Liverpool with your father, like, that is something that you would assume will be affected massively by this, that there will be widespread protest from the football fans of those traditional clubs in England, that people will just stop showing up from the local areas or the people who've made that pilgrimage even from Ireland on a regular basis in the past, because this won't be forgotten too quickly.
No, it won't. And you think about it, like how they thought it would, you know, coexist with the Premier League, that the teams would be able to continue. You know, the Premier League aren't going to stand for that. You've seen statements come from the Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, that they're going to obviously expel the clubs. I hope they do it, because what is the Premier League without those teams? You know, the kind of that success that, you know, Leicester had a few years ago, which is then they get into the Champions League. But, you know, all these stories are kind of gone. It's like everything has just been thrown out the window, just out of pure greed for money. It's no consideration for, you know, the Championship, League One, League Two, all the way down. And it's the same for, you know, the other countries like Spain and Italy. It's hard to kind of wrap my head around. Like, just, I can't believe these conversations have been happening, that they're talking about, like, obviously exploring this idea, and now they're really, you know, going for it. You could see all the clubs have dropped out of the ECA. It's just crazy.
When you say the Premier League should expel the clubs, like, is that something that, like, is it a points deduction? Is it actually just removing them from the Premier League and just kind of leaving them off, cutting them loose, cutting the 6 clubs loose from the Premier League?
I'd get rid of them. You know, just get rid of them. If they want to, you know, obviously go ahead with this and make it happen, thinking that they can control it, then just get rid of them. You know, it's not right for, you know, English football, look, or if it's Italian teams and Spanish teams, it's not right for those leagues. Like, fair play to Germany. I know they're predominantly fan owned or whatever, but they have investment from the fans. These are just, as you said a while ago, these are American owners who are just thinking about how can they line their pockets. They feel that this is the next step for their clubs to, you know, obviously progress and bring more money in. But I'd get rid of them. You know, just get rid of the clubs, because it's just a disgrace.
Gary Neville was talking yesterday about wresting the control back from these rich club owners. So if we take your idea to its conclusion, you have a Premier League where these teams no longer exist. Is that an opportunity then for English football to reform its entire ownership structure, to move towards a more German model? I'm by no means a legal expert on this, and I'm sure the horse has bolted well beyond the top 6 here, David. But if that becomes a reality, like, is it time for England to reconsider how its football clubs are owned? Because you might be able to wrestle back some sort of touch that you might be able to get with the communities.
I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know I have all the answers, whatever. Of course, look, these owners that we mentioned have brought in, you know, they bring in a lot of investment. They bring in, you know, they go and sign the best players, which makes the Premier League one of the most exciting. Well, it is the most exciting league in the world. It's the most watched. There's no getting away from that. I think there needs to, like Gary Neville talks on, you know, an independent regulatory, you know, looking after everything. I do think he's got a point that we can try and somewhat control it. Like, look, Liverpool, I'm a Liverpool fan. I benefited from it, from the players that they've been able to bring in. You look at Manchester United, of course, Chelsea and Man City would be the ones who've come in the last, 20 years of, not so much Man City, but from big investment that they've been able to bring in players to win titles, which made it more exciting. But like, what is the Premier League without certainly Liverpool, United, Chelsea, Arsenal, Manchester City, okay, Spurs, not really sure how they've gotten into it. They don't exactly have the big track record, but that just shows Daniel Levy already playing his hand in that. But what is the Premier League without those? When I was promoted into the Premier League with Hull, those are the games you look forward to. Now to have a Premier League without those teams, if obviously if everything goes ahead and they are expelled, what is the Premier League then? Of course, it's just, it will die off. Football will die off. It won't be the same. It will take many years for this to kind of go around, and then we don't know which way then, by then, how the Super League will actually be. It's certainly going to be interesting how it, unfolds over the next few months.
Is there any way in your mind, that there is even a tweak to this, that it works, or that it's more palatable for what Gary Neville was saying yesterday, or to the people who run the other Premier League clubs, for example?
I don't know, really. I don't see how they can coexist. Talking about obviously continue playing the Premier League on the weekend. If I'm right, obviously we're still getting all the information, but they're talking about playing midweek. I love the Champions League. It's kind of, you can see the Champions League has become over years about money that, I think it was Danny Mills was talking not so long ago, and he says, why is it, the top 4 English teams get in or whatever? It's the Champions League. It should be the champions. It does make a point, and they've tried to expand it. Now these clubs are looking to kind of, we are the biggest clubs of each league, so we want to form our own thing. But I think it kills the buzz. It's not what the fans want. It's just wrong. Everything about it just stinks of money and greed and trying to, have power and have control. And it's a prime example of foreign owners, whether it be, American, Russian, or whatever, just trying to have control and looking at, like, how can we, bring in more money to this football club? How can I line my pockets with more money?
And the grim reality this morning, David, is you look at the statement and you look at the figures that have come out, they're going to be able to do that. They will be lining their money with more cash. They talk about the 12 founder clubs being given €3.5 billion between the 12 of them. So, like, that's an absolute gold rush for them. And as you say, if that's their motive, they've hit the jackpot right here. And that's the bottom line, isn't it? So it'll come down to whatever legal challenge is going to be brought to the table. But I mean, when you look at the reporting this morning, it's as if the European Super League is actually going to be the one that instigates the legal challenges to stop it being blocked. So God knows who's going to have the most expensive law team in the world going toe to toe in this. But we'll have more on this later on in the show. We're going to have Tariq Panja of the New York Times as well. But we should talk a little bit about actual football, David, if you're up for that. The FA Cup. Saturday was an interesting one. I think on BBC at halftime of Chelsea against Manchester City, everyone was kind of admitting that this was a pretty poor game. But there is something fascinating about seeing this Manchester City team struggle tactically and seeing a manager like Thomas Tuchel figure out Pep Guardiola a little bit.
Yeah, well, definitely. I think the big thing that factor in with Manchester City was making so many changes. I know before anyone says it, the Pep has had this rotation, but it's kind of like he's playing a juggling game. He's chopped and changed. Obviously, they had the success in the quarterfinal Champions League. Look, they're 8 points ahead of United. I know United fans will be grabbing onto that bit of glimmer of hope, thinking that potentially we could go and we could win this. But certainly, I think he got it wrong, Pep. I think I would have liked to seen him play, kind of your Mahrez, your Bernardo, Foden. I would have liked to seen them start the game. It's very difficult when you bring in lads who haven't. Like, you can see with Sterling, it was one of his poorest performances I've seen him play. He just looks shot for confidence at the moment. Ferran Torres wasn't in the game. And I think that kind of played into Chelsea's hand. I definitely do think, yeah, you're right, Thomas Tuchel got his tactics right. And you could tell by the way that, that Manchester City played dominant possession, pushing the fullbacks on, that, it left Chelsea spaces and wide areas. You could see from Werner's runs that we were all shaped down the side, because they were trying to expose the centre-halves, pull them apart. I think even for someone who's been, when he's been playing regularly, Laporte, he was just out of touch the other day. He looked all over the place, which is very, very unlike him. But definitely Chelsea fully deserved it. Manchester City probably will be kicking themselves, but at the end of the day, I think they're purely settled on winning the Premier League and, of course, winning the Champions League. But at the same time as we were just talking, we'll see. It'll be interesting to see if this Super League thing causes any problems with that, because they're talking, I don't know if you saw, but there was something saying hand PSG Champions League trophy, no?
Yeah, I mean, like PSG and UEFA, they're PSG are in UEFA's good books, to say the very least.
I know of all teams that are owned by people, you know what I mean? Like they've said no, we're not going to sign up for it. We're going to stay in France. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. Like maybe that's their best chance of ending their Champions League curse, is by actually just being the good boy in all of this and actually just shutting up and staying in UEFA for a little bit longer. It's interesting when you talk about Werner, for example, and just how he epitomises this Chelsea pace on Saturday. Like, when it comes to the Tuchel system, they are going to come up against mass defences quite a bit when they go to challenge for the Premier League title next season, assuming the Premier League is normal next season. Is that something that might come up against them? But at the same time, when it comes into the Champions League quest this season, coming up against top quality teams, if they've got 3 games left, for example, coming up against high lines, this Chelsea attack is unbelievably dangerous. Oh
no, they have exceptional players, and I do think, right, these players have become a little bit more settled to English football. It's been, it was well documented how poorly they performed under Frank Lampard, and inevitably that's why he lost his job. But I think you could just see with Tuchel, there's someone who's been, a manager a bit longer than Frank, who's more experienced. If you saw Monday Night Football, where I think it was Carragher drew on it, who did, Frank doesn't have that experience of dealing with that. And you could see with Tuchel, someone who's been around a bit longer, that he's been able to just tweak and change, a few things. I definitely think Werner's playing a lot better. Of course, look, his statistics in front of goal aren't great. He's able to find more in him. And look, this Chelsea attack, like you said, Ziyech, it was interesting to listen to his interview. I think it was Jeff Shreves asked him, are we seeing the best of you? And he just kind of said, no, I'm getting there. If you look at it, when he came over, he had COVID, he was injured. Kind of like the Dutch league had stopped a long time. I do find he is starting to get up to speed with things now. They do have some quality players. You look at the rise again of Mason Mount, who just seems to be kicking on from time after time. They've just got quality all round. And I definitely do think that they do have a chance of winning this Champions League.
One player just I wanted to touch on, David, is Jorginho, who seemed the playing embodiment of Sarri ball, and after Sarri left, people were like, well, what is Jorginho's role here? And under Lampard it was kind of the same. Under Tuchel, he seems to have rediscovered himself.
I think with Jorginho, Jorginho is the type of player that if I don't want to, how can I say this? You need to understand what his role is. He's not a Kante, he's not, a Modric in a sense. Jorginho is only there to control the tempo of the game. If you look at the positions he picks up and how he gets on the ball, like when you spoke there about Sarri ball, if you remember back to his time when he first came to Premier League, he was averaging 120, 130 passes a game. A lot of people then moan, kind of going, well, he's only playing sideways and backwards. But a lot of the time, a fella like him needs to get on the ball in order to shift defences around the place. Now, if you're winning or if you're drawing, that's fine. If you're losing, then it can be seen as a negative approach, because he's just trying to control it, where it's only 5-yard passes, the centre-half get it, turn, go out. He's trying to basically shift, opposition players out of their formation, the structure that they're in. I'm a big fan of his. I think Tuchel has seen that. If you look at, like, in his PSG team, he had, Verratti was a similar type, albeit Verratti is better what he does. But he's certainly the one that he wants in the team, just to kind of control the tempo. That's someone who can put a foot in the ball when everything's a bit frantic. You've seen that the other day against Manchester City. He's one of the players who wants to get on it, knock it about, just take the ball, kind of calm everyone down. And when you have a player who'll take the ball anywhere and who's comfortable on it, it kind of controls that, franticness of everyone running around, but it also just adds a bit of calm to the other players. And I do think he's a massive part of Tuchel's plans going forward.
Is that having a big impact on Kante and his better performances then as well?
Yeah, probably. I think, look, there's been a thing about Kante, certainly even going back to Sarri, he's not played in his natural position of that holding midfielder. They've kind of, you need Kante. Kante is the best of what he does, going and winning the ball back, keeping it simple. We've seen him with France, how good he is. certainly before under Conte at Chelsea. I think now he's kind of, like Tuchel said, he was excited to, work with him and manage him. It seems like he's just looked at what is Conte good at and can we get him doing that? And you've seen that now, that he's just getting him to do what he is very good at. And that's how you'll get the best out of Conte.
You touched on it there, David, but it does seem that there is now a very noticeable drop-off between Pep's first choice 11 and his not first choice 11. When Pep plays roulette now, at this point, you can know how it lands, how the game is eventually going to go. There's a couple of players who perhaps the fact that they haven't been played in big games, maybe that lessens their confidence a little bit, and then the performances have dipped. But the depth that we would have pointed towards when it came to Manchester City a couple of months ago maybe isn't as strong as we thought.
I think it still is as strong. I just think it shows that they're not playing, some of the players aren't playing regular football. Like they're not up to speed. Like you look at the teams he played against Dortmund, you knew they were his starting 11. Like you look at it, okay, the midfield, you can chop and change. With Bernardo Silva, you know what you're getting. Rodri, Fernandinho, Gundogan, you know what you're getting with those players. I think the big one is the front three. I think, like I touched on there, Raheem Sterling, like, I don't know, look, his confidence must be low. I know his statistics aren't great this season, but the other day, his first touch at times, he was overhitting passes. If you remember, he was laid on, I think it was about 75, 80 minutes. It was Cancelo or something went to overlap him and he passed the ball straight out of the play, which is so unlike him. I think the massive drop-off is the front three players. I think that's the big thing. He went with Torres, Jesus and Sterling, but the three of them just looked like they were lost. They really struggled against Chelsea's back three. And I think the rotation can affect players. Of course, if you're confident, you want to, if you're doing well, you want to stay in the team. But I still think they have great squad depth. Certainly midfield and defence. Of course, look, I touched on Laporte, wasn't great the other day, but that's one game for him. He's been injured, yes, but over time he's been very good for Manchester City. So it's very hard to criticise him. Even if you look at the keeper, Stefan, he gets caught in no man's land for Ziyech's goal, kind of comes sprinting out and he goes back, and I think he thinks he's in the middle of the goal, but he's about 5 yards towards the right hand post. He just makes it so easy for Werner to roll across the Ziyech. But they still have the squad depth. There's no doubt in that. You can imagine the front three will be replaced for the League Cup final this weekend. Ederson will come back in, but you wouldn't be surprised if you've seen the other seven starting.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move on to tonight's game in the Premier League, Leeds United against Liverpool. It's an 8 o'clock kickoff. And since we were last talking to you on this show anyway, we were speaking to Graham Souness about the Liverpool midfield situation and how he's a little bit concerned about how the Gini Wijnaldum talk has affected the rest of that midfield. From the start of next season, David, how would you like to see this Liverpool midfield set up?
Wow, my three.
Yeah.
I'd probably still like to see, Fabinho, Wijnaldum, Henderson. Certainly with Klopp's system and the way Klopp wants to play. I think those three have been pivotal. That's why they won the Premier League and the Champions League. I definitely do think those are the main three. Thiago is an exceptional footballer, but he just brings something a little bit different. I think he's adjusting to Jurgen's system and the way Jurgen wants to play with this, that this famous Gegan press or whatever, when they get after him, when the front three press high. Will be interesting to see what happens with Gini. Obviously this whole Barcelona talk is still arising. Of course, Ronald Koeman being in charge is someone that he knows very well. So the situation, I believe it's not down to money. I think it's down to years of the contract. I think Gini wants more than what Liverpool give him due to their rule of over 30s. But it will be interesting to see how they do it. I would like to see him to stay. I think Liverpool fans, if he does leave, will be gutted to see him go, but they will, the work he's done over the last few years. But then if he does go, the natural progression would be probably Thiago in straight away. And then you'd look at, Curtis Jones to be pushing him over the next, year or two to really nail down a starting 11 spot.
So you think that there is a chance that Wijnaldum actually does stay next season?
Sorry, on.
You think that there is a chance, even a slight one, that Wijnaldum actually might hang around at Anfield next season?
Yeah, I do. Sorry there, I just missed part of that in case you asked me anything else. But I do think there is a chance, yeah. Like if you look at the games that have been played, like Genie has played so many games over the last few years, and I know you're going to be desperate to keep him. It's just Jurgen can obviously, say to the board, I want to give him the 3-year contract or whatever. The club might be looking at it in the sense like, is he worth it for the next 3 years? Then we've no sell-on value, that kind of way. So they'll be weighing up a lot of things. Of course, they'll be looking at like the rise of Curtis Jones coming through, someone who's come through the academy that then don't need to go and sign another midfielder. I would definitely say I wouldn't close the door on it. I would like to see him stay, but it's down to the club and the player if they can come to an agreement.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens on that one. It is an 8 o'clock kickoff tonight, as I say, between Leeds and Liverpool. Just one other thing I wanted to get your take on, David. I saw you tweeting about Lionel Messi at the weekend. Unbelievable goal. 4-0 win in the Copa del Rey final. What can you even say about this? I think, first of all, Frankie de Jong deserves a lot of credit for his role in this, the way that pass to cap off. An unbelievable move.
It's just phenomenal. I get stick over. I'm Messi over Ronaldo. A couple of my mates are Manchester United fans, so they're loyal. I get it. But what that young fella, what that fella does with the ball is just incredible. And even I tweeted it out the other day, and people hit me with all professional footballers should be able to do that. And I'm just like, no, I've played with Premier League winners, Champions League winners. I just can't do that. His ability to pick the ball up, dribble, shrug off tackles, his way to pass to people, his movement, like the composure of that when he gets the ball back off Frankie de Jong. Yeah, look, you can highlight his poor defending, but it's the drop of the shoulder. Like, it was a famous thing, if you remember Manchester United, those times when they were battling out against Barcelona, the Champions League, around 2010 or whatever, they were saying, what do you do with Messi? You show him on your right foot, but he's that quick, he's that good. He'll cut onto his right and go back around you onto his left. It's very, very difficult to stop him. And he's just phenomenal. He's someone that gets you off your seat. Of course, people will say, oh, well, he only won all the things because, he had the great players of Xavi, Iniesta, and those around him. Yeah, you're not wrong. But if you look at every great team that they've had great midfield, they've had great defence. Like I saw something fascinating not so long ago. Arsene Wenger was talking about, how hard was it to manage all the big egos at Arsenal. And he said all the best players in the world want to play with the best players. And that's true, because you don't want to, if you were looking at like even after the final, they won the trophy. All the players were asking for Messi for photos with him with the trophy. It just shows that, they're in awe of him, like I would be, but they're not at the level where they can carry the water alongside him. Do you know what I mean? They're obviously these young up and coming talents. They're wonderful young players.
Yeah.
We hope that we see them get to the level that we want them to. But Xavi, Iniesta and them Messi didn't have to worry about them, nor did they have to worry about Messi. They were always going to take care of their business. Now it's a case of mantle is falling onto Messi. And even with Ronaldo to a certain degree, you look at him at Juventus, they brought him in to win the Champions League. Like, he's trying to do everything, but you still need your team to, come along with you and do more. And I definitely like Messi, pure enjoyment watching him.
Yeah, without question. David Meyler, great stuff as ever. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.
David Meyler there on the line as ever on a Monday morning. It is 13 minutes past 8 and we've got a packed show still to come here on OTB AM. We're going to hear from Alan Quinlan and bring you the latest from the GAA after 9 o'clock. We're talking to Tariq Panja of the New York Times next about the European Super League.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Women's Six Nations is here, and OTB Sports is your one-stop shop for all the best coverage, analysis and opinion.
As Ireland take on Wales and France to decide their position on finals day, we will bring you a special weekly Six Nations show with some of the great names of the game, as well as special interviews with Irish legends Sophie Spence and Rosie Foley.
With reporters at the games, all the latest team news, match previews and much, much more. Check out otbsports.com/Women's Six Nations.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, browse through dozens of new player markets, all powered by Opta. Shots on target, left foot, right foot, headed goals, assists and more. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
You're welcome back. It is 8:15 on this Monday morning, and we're turning our attention back to the European Super League. Tariq Panja of the New York Times is with us to discuss. Good morning to you, Tariq.
Yeah, hi, good morning.
So I think last night, when everybody was going to bed, in Ireland anyway, they thought that the big clubs had bottled this, that there was no statement coming, but bottle it they did not, and a statement is out, and it's full steam ahead for the European Super League in the minds of those 12 clubs.
Absolutely. It was planned to be released in the evening, and again, I think that speaks to perhaps the lack of care for the domestic audience that these teams have. It arrived around 11 p.m. London time, past midnight in Spain and Italy, where these clubs are based. Now, the fan base was worried, etc., all day, and it eventually came. And it is, like you say, full steam ahead. They want to start as soon as practically possible. And this morning, I caught wind, saw a letter, quite a robust letter, that was sent to the FIFA president and perhaps more significantly the UEFA president, Alexander Seferin, saying that they have already started legal steps appears to be in several jurisdictions to protect themselves, to protect the 4 billion they already say they have secured for this event in the event of UEFA or FIFA or any other authorities trying to block them from getting their own way.
Are they going to be successful in that, Tariq? Is this going to be something that they have the legal standing on, these 12 breakaway clubs?
That's going to be one for the lawyers to battle over. Like, if you look at the public opinion, though, and plus the opinion of perhaps significant authorities, you've seen the Prime Minister in the United Kingdom express his opposition, Emmanuel Macron in France, the European Commissioner yesterday. There is a groundswell of opposition, popular opposition to this. However, we haven't seen anything like this tested in the court. So what they're essentially going to say is, you are preventing us from doing business, and that is not allowed, because, that ship has sailed a long time ago, right? Football is a big business. It has been sold to these corporate entities, and they believe they have a right to do whatever they like with it. Football doesn't have those protections that many of us have been arguing for that it should have as a social good, as something more than sort of something for the corporate space. But it hasn't really had those protections. So now we're heading for a big fight.
That's the thing. It does seem that all the arguments against this are rightly based on ethical grounds, on moral grounds, and they may not actually have the standing on a legal level. That, I mean, like I referenced Yannick Fjortoft's tweet earlier in the show, where he said owners are not the owners of clubs, fans are the owners of clubs. But in a legal setting, the owners really are the owners of the clubs. It really is the billionaires who have the sway here.
Absolutely, and it's almost like the perfect storm here. They've used the cover of the pandemic to say this is urgent. Yet we all know, we saw the leaks of these Super League plans from Florentino Perez in 2019, and they're from a couple of years earlier. This stuff has been in the works for ages. They started talking in detail before the pandemic. That's the cover. And then you look at who is involved. It is a bunch at the moment of American owners, largely, who control the Premier League clubs, and Florentino Perez, who had this dream, who have been driving this through. And, the American owners privately have long bemoaned the fact that, oh my God, you can get relegated here. That's not right. And they see relegation as also akin to not being in the Champions League. They feel that the size of their club means that they have to be in this event. They don't believe in the pyramid, really. You may see pithy statements talking about the pyramid. I remember being in a car with an executive of one of these teams years ago, maybe 6 years ago. It was around one of the Champions League draws. We just arrived at the airport at the same time, so you have this few minutes together in the car. And this person said, look, what other business in the world can you can't know from year to year that something as significant as say a quarter of your revenue, which is the Champions League income, won't be coming next year. But my argument to him was, well, look, no one forced you to buy these teams. This is the structure that governs football. It is the competition that perhaps makes it interesting to most people. It's the idea that teams can dream. Also, less and less so these days, let's be honest. The drawbridge has been pulled up from significant swathes of the footballing fraternity already, given the structures we have in place, given the money that's in play. And they want to have certainty that they're going to be in it, they're going to be profitable, and they're going to get the same revenues they expect year in, year out. If you wanted to do that, why own a football team? Why don't you own a biscuit company or a tin company, etc.?
It's true. Unpredictability is the greatest part of sport, and to take that away would be to take away one of the most magical parts of sport. There's been so many different theories that maybe have got dispelled since the SuperLeague statement last night. One of those theories were that this was some sort of Trojan horse almost for the new Champions League format from UEFA. If you were a conspiracy theorist, you might have thought that would be one of the possible reasons for this. That's definitely not the case. Once you see the news of Andrea Agnelli resigning as president of the ECA, he's also walked away from his seat on the UEFA Executive Committee, and Juventus has also left the ECA. Is this UEFA meeting due to go ahead this morning, Tariq? And what is the story there? Are they still going to go ahead and discuss this new Champions League format?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just started.
Right.
The UEFA Executive Committee in Montreux in Switzerland has started. This obviously is going to dominate the agenda. And I suppose for your listeners in Ireland, they're supposed to have a really robust discussion about the Euro 2020 host cities as well. This Champions League reform was supposed to be announced last week. It was only under pressure from these clubs, who they now see as being very two-faced in wanting more control over this Champions League, the UEFA Champions League, that they delayed that for a week to enter into negotiations with them to try and figure something out. Those negotiations, those discussions are still happening, and I fully anticipate at about 2 p.m. Today, Swiss time, UEFA will announce a reformed 36-team Champions League that begins in 2024. I mean, we're through the looking glass a bit here, aren't we, with what's happening alongside it?
Regardless of what happens here, Tariq, this is irreparable damage in the relationships between Juventus and other clubs not in the 12, for example. I mean, they're the ones that have put their head above the parapet mainly because of Agnelli's involvement here. But between the other 11 clubs involved, already committed, and those clubs not involved here, regardless of anything else, the idea of a breakaway will surely be unpalatable for everybody at UEFA.
It's broken, and it's not just UEFA. Agnelli's a very interesting figure, very conflicting figure, and a man who I would love to have heard his voicemails yesterday, or seen his text messages, or been in the room as he was talking to the sound and fury from those people he would have considered him a friend not so long ago would have been deafening. You just look at the ECA, for example. That's more than 200 clubs in Europe, top division teams. At a stroke, this thing devalues about 95% of them. And he was the president of their organisation. He was the chief interlocutor between the ECA, UEFA, FIFA, etc. He was the man working on their behalf. Meanwhile, he was doing this behind their backs. And as for Alexander Seferin, he was a huge fan of Andrea Agnelli. He got him onto the UEFA Executive Committee. The two men were friends. In fact, Seferin is the godfather to Agnelli's youngest child. That was when these talks first began over the Champions League. The two men struck up a friendship, and now this is hugely embarrassing for Alexander Seferin, and I can't see a lot of these relationships being recoverable at this stage.
He's certainly the one that grabs all the headlines, Agnelli, when it comes to maybe the two-facedness of this whole thing. Ed Woodward isn't immune from that same criticism. He sat on a UEFA committee that endorsed Champions League reforms this past Friday. I presume there's a few others as well, Tariq, who would have been giving the thumbs up to UEFA publicly and then privately knew that their owners were running this thing in the background.
Yeah, it's amazing. UEFA, under pressure from the clubs, and perhaps quite rightly over the years, has tried to kind of create a broader church of stakeholders, saying, look, we're not just going to impose our diktat from top down. We understand you guys are the big players in this, and you should have a right to have a say on how football is run and governed. And these guys have come into the tent. But to be honest with you, it speaks to a broader point about these multiple hats these guys wear. And I think if it's become clear, if it wasn't before, that the only hat they really, really wear is that of their club. Ed Woodward, for example, he sits on Premier League steering committees. He sat, as you said, on the UEFA committee that decided the Champions League reforms. They voted those through last Friday. But, not so long ago, do you remember Project Big Picture?
Yeah, what's the story there?
Right. So Project Big Picture, for the listeners who might not be aware, was a similar power grab by a group of elite teams, but this time over English football. They wanted essentially the top six, funny enough, these six that have signed up to go to the Super League, to have almost a controlling say of how the Premier League is run, and they wanted to have a larger slice of the finances. The Glazers and FSG, the company that controls Liverpool, were the masterminds behind that one, and are also heavily involved in this one. There was a similar backlash raining down on these guys from fans, from other teams, from politicians, etc. Pretty much exactly what we've seen in the last 12 to 24 hours. And then the Premier League puts out a uniform statement saying they're uniformly allied to oppose the Project Big Picture. And you've got to ask yourself, how could that be true if two of the members are the people who pushed this idea out? So I think a lot of this speaks to the governance of football. A lot of this is broken. And just one thing on the Glazers and John Henry and Co at Liverpool. They've been working in the shadows silently to essentially destroy this sort of decades-old settlement that we have for world football. And look, no one would begrudge the owners of these teams wanting to have plans and to discuss how their franchises operate and work in the future. However, it's striking that not a single one of them has deigned to give a public statement on this beyond written words, have an interview, come out of the shadows. It's really sad. Millions of supporters around the world follow these teams. Meanwhile, all of this happens in a cloak and dagger way. And even when it has come out, these guys don't have the kind of bravery to actually explain themselves. Maybe they have a good reason for what they're doing, but it strikes me as really odd that you would want to take control of these enormous cultural institutions. They're not big money companies in the scheme of things. There's huge companies in the world out there that make way more money, but there's very few that is culturally significant as, say, Real Madrid, Liverpool, or Manchester United. And it beggars belief that these people who are putting these schemes together cannot speak to the public to explain themselves.
For sure. Just a couple of other things just to wrap up on, Tariq. The various governing bodies now, it's clear obviously UEFA is never going to back this because it flies totally in the face of the Champions League. Is there a chance, however, that FIFA changed their mind on this? I know that publicly they haven't given their backing there against this, but it's not as strong as some people might have thought, that there is an idea out here that they could do a U-turn yet.
I have a sense and a little bit of understanding on background that FIFA was involved in these talks and has been involved in talking to these people about these ideas for a number of months. These plans were first leaked in January. If you remember, the Super League documents were leaked. We published among some other publications. And in January, that time, FIFA put its name to a statement. In fact, it looked like FIFA was leading on a statement that was signed by the other 6 football confederations that sort of said they would not endorse an unsanctioned breakaway competition anywhere in the world. Those who would participate in such a thing would face severe backlash. But the backstory here a little bit is they were strong-armed into doing this by UEFA. There was a meeting between Alexander Ceferin and Gianni Infantino in which Ceferin said to Infantino, look, if you're really not with these guys, then sign this document. But the document has a degree of caveats in it, as does the FIFA statement yesterday. If you look at the words, if you parse it for language, it says a closed breakaway Super League. Now, this one says there'll be 5 places for teams outside of the 15 founder members. So is FIFA really going to deny these guys as strongly as it suggests? I think it's one of those that we have to wait and see.
Yeah, because they will say that the 5 places do make it an open league, and that this isn't a closed shop, which obviously kind of flies in the face of a lot of logic. Just on that statement again, though, from the Super League last night, there seems to be a concerted effort to talk to people lower down the football pyramid. Anielli's saying the 12 founder clubs represent billions of fans across the globe. Joel Glazer said there will be increased financial support for the football pyramid, and Florentino Perez says we will help football at every level. To what extent is this true, Tariq?
Well, they're going to throw some money at it. Again, it's the same big picture model. They said all the money, there's going to be a fund, and there's going to be money that will filter down, crumbs will filter down to the have-nots in the football pyramid. And they would say 10 billion over the life of the Super League initial contract. Now, the initial contract is for 23 years, did a bit of number crunching. That works out at 437 million euros. That's quite a big number if you just take it in isolation. And they say that number will be paid out in solidarity to European football. So all the teams that aren't in the Super League. However, you're saying this league is only for 20 teams. Currently, you have a UEFA Champions League and a Europa League that has 64 teams in it. So money from those competitions goes to that many teams at the moment. Yeah. As well as that, UEFA pays 237 million in solidarity payments in a similar way to the 430 odd million that this group said it's going to do. So I don't buy the fact that this will benefit European football in any way the same way that European football currently benefits, given that a lot more teams get a lot more money currently.
Mm. Finally then, who else do you think is going to be added to this? What's your sense?
There's 3 spots that they've saved there, and look, it's clear they would like Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund to go there. So far, Paris Saint-Germain have had the talks, have said no, as have the German teams, because they for varying reasons, different reasons, they have decided to not sign up now. Paris Saint-Germain, for example, is owned by Qatar. Qatar also owns beIN Sports. beIN Sports is the biggest media partner of UEFA. Has paid them billions of dollars over the year. Nasser Al Khelaifi, the UEFA Paris Saint-Germain president, also sits on the UEFA executive committee. So there are all those relationships. For the Germans, there is a sense that they are so acutely sensitive to the activism that has been displayed quite well over the years by German football fans to things they don't like. Most recently, Qatar sponsorship, etc. That Bayern had. So they don't want that to disrupt their season. Let's see where we are in the summer. Let's see if this thing goes ahead, whether these 3 teams will hold the line and say, yeah, you know what, we can't go to do this.
Right. Tariq, great stuff as ever. Thanks a million for being so generous with your time.
Great, nice to be with you.
Cheers. Tariq Panja there of the New York Times. Make sure to give him a follow as well on Twitter. He's been across the story for the last 24 hours and he's got all the breaking news, like another UEFA meeting this afternoon. Who knows what sort of stubborn statement is going to come out from that meeting later on. Make sure to go on to otbsports.com as well for all the latest breaking news on that story. It is 8:34 on this Monday morning. You're watching OTB AM, live as always in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Now, Johnny Ward and Brendan O'Brien joined Joe Malloy for the Sunday paper review yesterday. Here's Johnny on where the GAA has failed.
there are sort of links between the Keith Higgins thing and the Joe Brawley article, because Keith Higgins talks about, trying to get hurling going in Mayo. And for me, the GAA has failed in the sense of getting hurling played around the country, because hurling is basically the greatest field sport in the world, and it's ours. And we can't sell it to areas like Mayo. And now we have a situation where hurling's in East Belfast and football's in East Belfast. I think the other failing of the GAA has been to sell it to the Protestant community in the north, because it's basically a scandal how few Protestants in Northern Ireland play Gaelic games. And I've been on the show about this before. I'm not exactly sure what the answer is. I think, we have an anachronistic sort of nationalism and flag waving maybe in Gaelic games that was, belonging to a time when we needed to assert ourselves in the time of British rule, and that's how the GAA was founded, but is now completely outdated. And I think we need to attract people from different backgrounds, and maybe GAA has failed in terms of getting those mixed race kids that soccer has. So there are all these things that the GAA has to work with. And if I just go back to the very briefly to the Higgins article, which is a beautiful article by Dennis Walsh. Bernie Madoff obviously passed away during the week. This was a line that I thought was amazing, really. There are 4 adult hurling teams in the county now, and in Higgins' time there have never been more than 6. As the hurling championship became more heavily stratified, Mayo dropped to the 4th tier, while the footballers invested their supporters' hearts in a variety of Ponzi schemes. The hurlers had no access to such funds. That's a staggering line about a place like Mayo where it's all football, and Keith Higgins as an outlier who loves hurling. His dad is from Mount Bellew, which is more or less where I'm from, which incidentally itself is a football area, not really a hurling area, Joe Bergen country and so forth. So hurling in North Galway wouldn't be that strong, but we do have these pockets where, like Ballygar, where these kind of hurling clubs thrive.
Yeah, Johnny Ward there speaking on the Sunday papers yesterday. You can get the full podcast back on the OTB Sports app, and you can check that out on Spotify if that's where you get your podcasts as well. Right, let's turn our attention to the sports pages this morning. And OTBsports.com leads with Gary Neville's comments from yesterday. Relegate United, Liverpool and Arsenal. Gary Neville speaks on behalf of every football fan. It's going to be very interesting to see what that angle has and what footing that has in the legal world. As Tariq said there's probably big questions to be had for legal professionals rather than journalists this morning on the European Super League going toe-to-toe with any attempts to block it. If there is a groundswell within British football to punish Manchester United and Liverpool and Arsenal and the other clubs, will that actually have any legal standing? Could we actually have a situation where they won't be able to do that, and the Premier League will have to shut up and put up with the fact that they've got 6 teams that are trying to race away from the rest of Europe? You've also got Furious fans threatening to abandon clubs over Super League plans. Don't be late for dinner. Fergie's trip to Tala to sign Stephen Bradley. That's from the papers as well yesterday. And if they rang me, I'd certainly discuss it. Vinny Perth is open to a Dundalk return. He was on commentary with Nathan yesterday during the Premier League. The Irish Independent, Super League stunner is their main headline this morning. The picture of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer there. Widespread condemnation as 12 clubs, including 6 from Premier League, announced plans for a new midweek European Super League as soon as practicable. I think since going to print, it's been confirmed that August is their supposed start date, or their preferred start date. The Irish Examiner then leads with Field Day. Elite GAA coaching insight into how counties can hit the ground running. Really interesting stuff in the Irish Examiner sports section this morning. 5 pages of build-up to how coaches will actually approach these next few weeks, because what is it, Tommy, 4 weeks before the National League, and then straight into it, and then obviously it's only going to be 4 weeks of the National League itself until the Championship. So it's going to be pretty hell for leather over the next little while.
It's going to be incredibly tough on players, Owen, who are being expected to go on from pretty much nothing, maybe doing your own training, doing your own running, which you just can't replicate what it's like on a pitch when you're, I suppose, shipping hits or giving hits or, moving sharply left and right. There'd be a big worry, I think, amongst a lot of coaches, a lot of intercounty coaches and plenty of players that there's a big threat of injuries. I know we've got Alan Quinlan lined up in a few minutes on, but there's a rake of comments coming in on the YouTube stream regarding the European Super League. It's generated a huge amount of interest, obviously. Tariq was brilliant there. But just some of the comments that we've got coming in. We have a super chat on YouTube from Mark Eric Lane. Beyond sanctions for the clubs and players, UEFA should announce that any broadcaster that shows a Super League game will not be considered for future UEFA FIFA broadcasts. Stifle the money. This ends. A good comment from Mark there, but I'm not sure if that would even make a difference. Wayne has been in touch. I wonder if Newcastle would have been part of this breakaway if the Saudis had bought the team. This has nothing to do with elite football, but setting up franchises like the NFL. Patrick Campbell, surely it'll make the current players' contracts null and void. If they're contracted to play in the Premier League, UEFA and FIFA competitions, how could they be employed to play in it without new contracts? And there's loads on and in there. I thought there was an interesting comment from Emma Carroll, who runs the show for us. If FSG don't back down, I'd be happy enough for Klopp to walk, and he won't walk alone. #SuperLeague. So Emma is tweeting, and she's not the only Liverpool fan tweeting something similar to that at the moment.
Could have like Liverpool FC taking part in the real Premier League, and then Liverpool franchise, whatever.
Would you walk away from your beloved Arsenal?
I mean, the soul of Arsenal has long since dipped out of its body. I'm not surprised, but I'm actually quite proud that Gary Neville said he was ashamed or disappointed with Arsenal, that he still thinks that Arsenal have the traditional elements about them at the club. Arsenal have long since lost their soul. They very much have a majority owner who wants to utilise the club as an ATM. And if you see football in that way, like Tariq makes that great point, that football isn't necessarily the game for you if you want to make huge turnover. The thing is, maybe the European Super League will become the game for you if you want to make huge turnover. And I think we've laboured that point quite a bit this morning, that it's just the massive difference in profits running a Premier League / Champions League team compared to what a European Super League team would look like. Great point. The Newcastle thing came to my mind as well yesterday evening. If that takeover had happened, what would actually would Newcastle be in the mix? Now, the thing is, they've left a few open spots there, so they could yet be taken over in the coming years, and they could yet join up with the European Super League. It would certainly make sense on that front. And then on the television rights, that does make sense from this vantage point when we look at what UEFA have said and when we look at what FIFA have said, and we can see that the two most powerful footballing governing bodies anyway will be able to battle against this. But if one of them falls, and if FIFA falls, then all of a sudden UEFA are on their own. And if it's FIFA on the side of the European Super League, then the whole thing changes. Right now, I think it's fair enough to think that there will just be too much of a groundswell of opinion for this not to happen. But if one of those big governing bodies go in favour of the European Super League, that'll be a very, very significant moment. UEFA are not going to be that person anyway, that's for sure. UEFA are never going to be on board for this because it kills the Champions League. And if we think the Premier League won't be good without these clubs, then just think about what the Champions League will be like without them, because it literally won't be possible. The domestic leagues might be able to continue on the weekends. The midweeks are going to be taken up with this new Super League. It is everywhere.
One of the most fascinating things that Tariq had said, well, not fascinating, I suppose, I don't think my eyes were open to it, just how horrified all the American owners are of relegation. I hadn't really thought about that, just how it's such an alien concept to them. So like, anyone who thinks this is a surprise, like this has been coming for a long time.
Yeah, no, it certainly has. It's everywhere on the back pages this morning. Criminal is the back of the Irish Daily Star. That's Gary Neville. Rebel clubs face expulsion over breakaway. That is the front of the Daily Telegraph sports section. The Irish Sun: we'll ban you. UEFA threat as rebels plunge game into crisis. Criminal act against fans. That's more from Gary Neville. There is other stuff in the papers, I should say. The Kennedy assassination, for example. Coach's theory on boys is shot down by rampant Rangers. We've got GAA draw comfort. Do we have GAA draws actually, Tommy?
The Munster hurling draw. I'm just checking my phone here.
I'll leave you to it while I finish off these back pages. Soccer wars. EPL bite back for plans over Super League. That is the Irish Daily Mail. The London Times: Big Six breakaway plot sparks outrage. Photo there of Kelechi and Nacho celebrating. That was the actual football that happened yesterday. Leicester City through to the FA Cup final. Football in turmoil. New Super League plan condemned, and the Iheanacho fires Foxes to final. The Herald goes with the snappy headline: revolting. UEFA, Neville and Keane slam Big Six plan for breakaway league. And then finally, the Irish Times: breakaway league proposal provokes fury. And one of the good news stories from the weekend, Leona Maguire with a brilliant performance. We're going to get to her in the performance rankings after 9 o'clock this morning. Tommy, you do have the Munster hurling draw before we get to Alan Quinlan.
The Munster hurling draw on for the 2021 championship quarter final. So we've it's an open draw. You've got 5 teams in the mix. The first 2 drawn were put into a quarter final. The next two are into the semi-final, and then the 15 draw played against the quarterfinalists. The quarterfinal is Clare versus Waterford. The first semi-final is Limerick versus Cork. And then Tipperary will play the winners of Clare and Waterford. So, like, we all knew it. It didn't matter which way it fell. There's a couple of titanic clashes lined up in the Munster Hurling Championship. It's knockout. There's no round robin. It's do or die. And this is going to be cracking stuff.
Yeah, in the sense of the Munster final, it is do or die, but obviously there is a backdoor in the hurling championship anyway.
Yes.
So from an All-Ireland standpoint. But the thing about that Munster hurling draw, when it's an open draw like that rather than the round robin, every game just looks class. No matter what combination you would have read out there, it all sounds very appetising. So it is a brilliant draw, as it always is in Munster hurling. Cheers for that, Tommy. We are turning our attention back to the rugby now, because it finished Ireland 15, France 56 in the Six Nations on Saturday afternoon. Alan Quinlan is with us to reflect on it. How are you, Alan?
Morning, lads. How are you?
Was that scoreline a fair reflection of the game?
Yeah, it was. Unfortunately, France were just too good, and Ireland made too many mistakes and errors. But it was a very, very impressive French side who probably got the best out of themselves on the day. But the Irish team didn't help themselves with some of the mistakes and errors and lost balls and issues at the breakdown. But look, it was one that was a lot of excitement going into, given the result the week before against Wales, and a lot of exciting young Irish players in this team. But it's a harsh lesson. I think Adam Griggs spoke afterwards about, probably the need to experience some of this pain going forward. There's a lot of new players come into the group in recent years, and they're harsh lessons to learn. But it was a fair reflection in the end, because France were just too powerful. Some of the rugby they played was outstanding.
There's a couple of things there that I want to get into. First of all, the error count that you mentioned there. Why was it such an error-strewn performance from Ireland compared to the previous weekend?
It's just pressure from the opposition. I think, they were trying to, I think the tactic was to try and move the ball and try and move the French pack around a bit more, and, get the ball to Baveen Parsons as much as they could, and Emer Constantine maybe at full back, attacking that line, and they just weren't able to do that without any sort of penetration up front and without any sort of gain line exposure around the fringes. So their ambition has to be applauded, but I think tactically they probably should have kicked a little bit more into the opposition half and turned the French a little bit and got a good kick chase. So I watched the game, and I'm sure lots of people did, with frustration and just some of those errors and mistakes that certainly were avoidable. They're a very, very good side, France, but I think the Irish team, they didn't help themselves at times. And it's the same at any level. You've got to protect the ball and make sure you're not loose with it. And I suppose we've criticised the men at times over the years for not offloading and not looking for offloads at times. And the opposite on Saturday, probably you see the result of trying to keep the ball alive too much, and you get punished against a very physical, strong French side. But you have to commend the girls and say that their effort levels were fantastic, and it is a harsh lesson for them. They're coming up against a semi-pro team. A lot of these players are training full-time, whereas the Irish girls have got to go to work, and they've got jobs, and they've got to mix the rugby with their working lives as well. So it's difficult. I don't know what the answer is here. Do you make do we go professional here, and does that make all the difference? I don't think it's a quick fix solution. It's not needed. And look, I think there's a lot of promise and there's a lot of hope with this team and the group of players that are there, that they will get better, they will learn from this, and they will improve a lot. And they showed the previous week. I think it's very difficult. England and France are just at a different level and I think everyone else is on a level below. Obviously, New Zealand are probably up there as well, but those three are probably at a level above everybody else in world rugby.
There's a number of factors for that. Like, one of the factors I think that maybe isn't getting spoken about enough is the difference in the club game in Ireland compared to the club game in France. And like, the club game in Ireland was just completely wrecked by coronavirus, just no games whatsoever. And like, I mean, there's talk that being in training camp for so long might have been a positive. They could have worked on a few things like their set piece, but you see like an absence of the kicking game at the weekend, sort of things, Alan, that I'd imagine you can only get to a high level of if you're playing every single week, even if it's at club level. Just being in training and training only for the vast majority of the last year, it probably held them back a good regard when it came to eating into that scoreline on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think with respect to I was reading some of the articles from former players, and they were speaking about the need to increase the player pool, make the league more competitive, get more girls playing the game at grassroots levels, and increase that playing pool. And I think it's very, very obvious on if you have more people playing the game, you have more potential to select from, and that's probably where the strength needs to come. And the RFU are in a position of financial trouble, given the pandemic, and we only saw recently redundancies in the RFU. So calls just to make the women's game professional, that won't happen at the moment because for obvious reasons. But I think it will happen in the future. I think it needs to happen. They need to get the support and the money they deserve, and to be given the opportunity to be a full-time athlete. I think that's something that I remember myself as a player when I started out. Started out as a part-time player in '97 with Munster, and you're still trying to work, and lots of the guys starting out in Munster were at that, and it makes such a difference when you can focus solely on the game and your diet, the nutrition, the fitness levels, the rest, all that kind of stuff. And hopefully we'll see that someday with the Irish girls, that they'll get that opportunity. But I think the immediate focus should be trying to increase the player pool. And again, that's support for that will happen throughout the country, and all the different traditional men's clubs, if you like. I remember in my club, Clanwilliam, probably 20 years ago, the women's team starting there, and the vibrancy and the feel-good factor it brought to the club, and the enthusiasm of the girls playing at the time was brilliant to have them involved. So I think there needs to be a push for all the clubs to kind of support their women's teams within the clubs as well, and try and create more pathways, obviously through the RFU, and getting more girls playing the game. And that in turn will help increase the playing pool, which hopefully will give you more quality and more players to select from. So I felt really sorry for the girls on Saturday, because, the effort they put in and the commitment and the desire, was second to none. And I'm sure, they had 20 training camps in since October, since they last played Italy before the start of the Six Nations. And they put so much time and effort into that. And it was just disappointing, but it's understandable, and that was the fear going into the game, that this French team they made 8 changes to the team that played the week before, and they're just very, very powerful, and there's so much depth within that squad, and their league is much stronger. So it's about increasing the strength of the league, hopefully, and that will give more opportunities to girls to play and go and play for the country, which you can see means the world to these girls.
Yeah, so something as simple as power, Alan, is something that takes years of work, I'd imagine. And so, that was just that was a huge difference maker at the weekend when you lost that parity. Once it was evident that France were a much more powerful team, you could see that the scoreline was getting away from Ireland. Just a couple of things on that. Like Stacey Flood, who came on speaking after the game, and she said to be able to open your eyes to a new game, a new tactical game, it's just great experience. And I know a lot of bad has come from COVID, but it's great to have that opportunity to play 15s and get capped as well. Like, it's not just about people picking up a rugby ball from a young age. There's people being introduced to 15s from 7s here as well. There's a few other complicated strands to this, Alan, which is setting Ireland back a little bit at 15s. But at the same time, if the influence is more on the 15s game rather than the 7s game, then there won't be much room for introducing players to the game during the Six Nations. The players will have bedded in through years of experience.
Yeah, I think they have to try and work together. And Adam Griggs has had the benefit of picking some of the 7s players, which has helped the team and helped the squad and given him more options. And they have World Cup qualifiers coming up this year, and that's the focus. Obviously they play Italy away next week, and to finish off third and beat Italy would be fantastic, and they've got to pick themselves up and try and do that. But you know, the World Cup qualifiers coming up again this year against Italy and Scotland, so that has to be the main focus. But it's trying to work. Again, it's a difficult situation trying to feed off both 7s and 15s, because look, a lot of the players that have never played rugby are going into the 7s game, and they're natural athletes, and it's easier probably to adapt in the 7s game. And you know, the view of the 7s hopefully will be to feed over into the 15s as well, and that they can work together. So it's a complex issue, and they definitely need more support. The one thing that was probably, you know, as Stacey Flood said, that, you know, getting that exposure and seeing what it's like firsthand, and they'll review the video and they'll look back at the ball presentation, the ferocious nature of France at the breakdown, their decision making, the overall package was so impressive, and their execution, and some of the tries they scored were unbelievable. But there was a couple of tries that Ireland, they gave them that momentum, they added to their own downfall with mistakes they made. And that kind of, the game got away from Ireland then, and it was so difficult to kind of keep the heads up, and they were trying hard. Their line-out didn't work for them. So the kind of fundamentals of the game need to be better. But the exposure to that kind of team and seeing them firsthand and experience it will only make them get better, want to get better, and understand what's required as well. So, you know, you can have a coach at any level or with any team hammering home his messages, but when you experience it, sometimes the pain of that and the standard that's required, sometimes there's added benefit in that. So they will gain that. Unfortunately, it's a harsh lesson. They don't have much time to feel sorry for themselves. They've got to pick themselves up now, and there's a great opportunity to go to Italy, try and get a result and finish third in the tournament, which would be a brilliant achievement given the level that France and England are at. And you know, they'll play to see who wins it. So that's an opportunity for them to go and try and do that.
What do Ireland need to do to get that win against Italy next weekend? What do they need to brush up on? Because this Italy team is a team that's coming and improving. Yeah, well, look, they've it'll certainly won't be as daunting. It is away from home. They're not at the level of France and England. They're a very good side. They had a good win in Scotland. They've got to get the simple basics right on. They've got to make sure they win their line-out. Their line-out malfunctions, and that's a part of the game that for any team has to be right if you want to be successful and win matches. So they've got to fix that. Seem to be timing issues. Of course, there was great pressure from France in the lineup, but it was slow and it was pedestrian. And you know, I've said this for a long time about the men's game. You know, the way Ireland have struggled against England in recent years, a lot of that was down to the line-out not working well. And we saw this Six Nations, the Ireland men's team, their line-out was, the percentages were really high, and it gave them it gives you an opportunity to play. It gives you an opportunity to attack off first phase and really go at the opposition. So that's an area that really needs to get better for this week against Italy. Win your line-out, create those opportunities, and get the ball into Hannah Tyrrell's hands early, so she can use runners outside her and try and get the ball wide, and use Bavings, Parsons, and you know, create that attack and trying to get Emer Considine into the wider channels. So look, there's a lot of things, forcing the ball in contact when you should take it in, go to ground, recycle, and probably getting a better balance of just trying to move the ball, because a lot of the time on Saturday they just tried to move passes and ship them on and hope that the space was out there. But you've got to create that space by engaging the opposition. And sometimes you've got to take the one-out runner scenario, recycle it quick, and engage the opposition back line or defensive line to get a bit narrow, and then look for the space out wider. So they're probably the most obvious things that they need to have better. And I'm sure they'll Adam Griggs and the players themselves will know that. Yeah, like one of the positive news, Alan, is that the game is actually going to be moved from Parma to Donnybrook at the weekend because of COVID reasons. So that's one thing that'll go in Ireland's favour. That's set to be confirmed, I think, today. Like on that, moving the ball better. Like, I mean, we're talking about quick fixes here and thinking about ways that Ireland can improve in the space of 7 days. Just going to boot a little bit more just seems to be a way or an avenue for this Ireland team to get into games against the more powerful outfits, that had they done that on Saturday, they might have had a bit more joy in attack. It wouldn't have stopped the behemoth that France really are in their power game. But it seems that is the way that Ireland need to perhaps move their style if they want to get the most out of this group of players at the moment.
Yeah, well, look, it's a lot of it was down to power and physicality and size of the French players. They were so physical. They were harassing Ireland at the breakdown continuously. They were physically. It was taking 2 or 3 Irish girls to get rid of the French threat over the ball. The scrum was creaking a little bit. They got a couple of scrum penalties as well. So you can't just invent players and expect that you're going to fix that really quickly. But again, I'll say this again, France and England are at a different level from a physical point of view and from a technical point of view. So it's not all about physicality and power. It's about technique. It's about ability. It's about being a unit. And the Irish forwards need to get, tighter, technically a little bit better, fix the problems that they had this week. And then, their biggest strength is obviously if they can move the ball. They have great pace out in the wider channels. And I think Sani Nepu in the centre, she was brilliant as well. Try and get her some ball. She's a playmaker. She runs hard. She's ultra committed and is a brilliant footballer as well. So, the biggest strengths are, and that's not taking away anything from not taking it away from the Irish forwards. They'll know themselves. They need to be tighter as a unit, work better. As I said, get their scrum and line out. They're the principles right. To be fair to them, every breakdown, they're so committed. I was like screaming at the television, and I was really proud of the effort, the reload and the tackle, getting back on their feet. And it was a daunting task because so much strength, power, really good technique from the French. And they just kept going right to the end. And like I said, it's just some of those mistakes and errors when you're under pressure in any sport. When you're under pressure in sport, that's when you make mistakes. If you can cope with that pressure, deal with it, that's what makes you a stronger, more resilient team who make good decisions under pressure. So, like we said a little bit back, it's about dealing with that pressure. And they will learn from it. I think there's so much promise in this team. I think they will get better. And, in fairness, I was very proud of the effort out of all of them. I thought they were so committed, and I felt so sorry for them because a few things went against them, bit of bad luck, bounce of the ball, some of the kick-throughs from the French set up perfectly for them. So small margins, but that's what happens when you're playing against very good sides.
Like you talk about feeling pride watching that performance at the weekend and Ireland competing at the breakdown. Like there's probably elements to be taken as well from the sounds that they made afterwards. I know Ciara Griffin was fairly bullish on TV in her interview, saying that they didn't get hammered as much as the scoreline would suggest. And I guess after a game against France, after any game against England and against any professional or semi-professional team, it's very easy for an excuse to be served up for this group of players to say, look, they're way ahead of us in terms of the resources they have. And it's really hard to find any quotes from the weekend where any of the Ireland players are actually reaching for that excuse, even though it's a totally fair one and it is often being offered to them, which must give you encouragement, Alan, that this group of players aren't feeling sorry for themselves. So they're going out, and no matter how well resourced the opposition is, they're going out to win every single game.
Yeah, they've got to commend them. You've got to commend them for that. And I think they'll be very frustrated. I think the scoreline did flatter the French. I think the mistakes and the errors did make the French team look better than what maybe the gap is bigger than what it actually is. But they're ruthless, that's how good they are. They feed off the opposition mistakes. They create that pressure. And that just, the whole game had a feeling of Ireland doing 3 or 4 good things and then backing it up with a mistake, and then the opposition punishing them and being ruthless and executing really sharply when that mistake came. And So they've got to learn from this. They've got to, and it's good that they're not making excuses, but people on the outside, there is a reality there and we can't get away from the reality that these girls are semi-professionals. A lot of them are training full-time. They have a lot more financial support. They have a lot more resources around nutrition and fitness people and all that kind of stuff. Their league is stronger. They're exposed to more competitive rugby week in, week out. So there is a number of factors there. And there are things, hopefully, that will be addressed going forward. They're not quick fix solutions, but I think the women need more support, more resources, and we need to try and create more of a player base and increase that player base. And but the mentality of the players was good. I thought they, as you said, they didn't shy away from the fact that they were disappointed in the performance and they weren't making excuses, which is good to see. And I think, look, I think they will learn from this. I think, in 2014, 15 were great years for the women's team. They beat New Zealand. They won a Six Nations. And then there was a dip for a couple of years. And there is a feeling of optimism that this current group can challenge England, France for a title. It's maybe the gap is getting bigger, that they're getting stronger as well. They're getting fitter. But I think there's a fair bit of optimism here. And I think they deserve a lot of credit for, as I said, for the effort, the commitment, the desire that they showed. But, the harsh reality of it is they've got to be better with the ball, protect it, and when they get opportunities, take them and not give easy scores away to the opposition.
One other thing before we let you go, Alan, it was reported over the weekend that Andy Farrell could still join the line staff. Warren Gatland said the door is still open to Andy Farrell. Is this what you want to see your national coach do, to try and make an effort to get involved in the lines, given the information that you might learn or the experiences that you might have on the tour?
Well, you're always learning as a coach, I think, and that's the one thing I kind of get from any of these top-class coaches I would chat to over the years. And if the Ireland tour doesn't go ahead to the Pacific Islands, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be a great move from an Irish point, for Andy Farrell personally, and from an Irish point of view, to have him there. You're always seeing different techniques, different ways of doing things, being involved with top class players in a group, and you can take stuff away for your own team from that. So yeah, it'd be great if he was involved. If the tour doesn't go ahead with Ireland, it would be great. But like he said himself, he's committed to the Irish job. He's not in it that long. He's trying to develop players and get to know players. And a tour to the Pacific Islands would be an ideal opportunity for all those players to be out of that really big pressure cooker of Six Nations and relax, enjoy themselves, get to know each other a little bit better and see a different side to people. So I think it would be a good thing, obviously, if that tour doesn't go ahead. But, he's got to be with Ireland if they go on tour in the summer.
All right, Alan, good stuff. We'll chat to you again on Friday.
Cheers, thanks all.
Alan Quinlan there with us every Monday and Friday here on OTB AM. Right, it is 9:07 on this Monday morning. You are watching OTB AM, which is live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. That's telling you what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today, which you can listen to on the OTB Sports app. OTB Gold featuring Colm de Gooch Cooper is coming up at 1 o'clock. State of the Union, Keith Wood's rugby podcast, coming up at 3 o'clock. The split season football is up at 4 o'clock, and then OTB Gold with Mick O'Connell's birthday interview at the age of 80 from 6 o'clock, and then from 7 p.m. tonight, Off the Ball is live on your radio and on the OTB Sports app as ever. Right, the performance rankings are coming up, but after these, Vinny Perth joins us on OTB AM to talk about the Dundalk situation.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
OTB. Bemused, I think, is probably how he feels in his head. Bemused how they could go from where they were last season, 99 points, 67 games unbeaten at home, to a situation where they could be on the edge today of losing 6 games in a row at home.
OTB live commentary. Never miss the action right here on OTB Sports Radio. Keep up to date with the latest scores on the OTB Sports app. The OTB Sports app. Live score updates straight to your phone.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, browse through dozens of new player markets, all powered by Opta. Shots on target, left foot, right foot, headed goals, assists and more. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
American owners, the driving force behind this. You have your own experience of American owners with Dundalk.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's been another interesting week. Shane Keegan and Filippo Giovannioli leaving the club. From the outside, it feels like it's a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I understand it looks like it's a bit of a mess, and I get that, okay? Look, results on the pitch haven't been good enough, and ultimately, I think if results on the pitch were good enough, we wouldn't be having the same discussions about the ownership, about the structures in the club, all of that stuff. So I think they're two separate issues. I think it's good we have owners in the club from America. I think they're good people. I think their heart's in the right place. Do I think they've made a mistake? Yes, absolutely. And I've told them that. I have a good relationship with them. I've told them at different stages where I felt he went wrong. Not that I'm right. I don't know all the answers to running a club. But they're good people. Anyone that puts anywhere between $1 million, $1.5 million euro out of their own pocket into a League of Ireland club should be welcomed. And it's not being thrown at silly projects. It's being put in for the right reasons. Have they made mistakes? Yes. But ultimately, the management there have resigned. I think both of them have resigned. Technically, I don't know the whole ins and outs of it. We don't know. The truth is always in these cases, I've experienced it myself, somewhere in the middle. They've left. Results aren't good enough. But the Dundalk project, I don't think it's over yet. Genuinely believe that Dundalk as a squad is as good as any other squad, and they can still win the league this year. People will think I'm crazy for saying that. I think that squad can win the league this year. So it needs to turn very quickly for them. But I think they're more than capable as a club.
Would you go back?
I've certainly unfinished business in football in League of Ireland. Definitely have unfinished business up in Dundalk. It was a huge part of my life for 8 years. You know,
and yes, you are still close to the owner from...
Yeah, I would still have a good relationship with the owners, despite what people like to suggest and different things. Listen, for eight years, and my wife even knows this, the last thing I ever thought about going to bed was Dundalk. The first thing I thought about was Dundalk. So it's a huge part of my life. I feel I've unfinished business there. But football is a strange world. Who wouldn't want to manage a team that's capable of winning the league? Who wouldn't? So, long-winded way of saying.
Have you told the owner that?
No, I haven't. I haven't spoke to him in a couple of weeks. So it's not my place. It's if they rang me, I'd certainly discuss it with them. But I'm sure people would say this old lazy comment of who in the right mind would go into that club is just nonsense.
Well, that comment is there because of how you left the club and a feeling that there was outside interference into team selection, into signings, that the manager didn't have the final say, that the American owners, for all the good they're doing in investment, that actually they wanted a bit more than just investing. They wanted a control of the actual first team.
Yeah, well, that's not true. They didn't want control of the first team. Look, people have their own opinions of what happened. Only really me and the owner himself or the chairman have understand what was going on between our relationship. It's modern day football now. People invest in clubs. They put the money in, they own the club, and they feel they have a certain say to a point. And once that doesn't cross the line, it's fine. Listen, anyone in the right mind in Irish football would be interested in Dundalk Football Club. And it's a nonsense comment in the sense of people say you'd be mad to go into that club. No, you wouldn't. You're going into a club capable of winning the league title and being very strong in Europe this year. What manager in the right mind or coach wouldn't be interested in that? Almost all of them in this country. So it's a no-brainer for people. There will be huge interest in that club. The CVs will arrive in the door this week, a couple of hundred, and I'm no doubt about that.
Vinny Perth in conversation with Nathan Murphy in the aftermath of Manchester United against Burnley yesterday. Vinny Perth firmly throwing his hat into the ring for the now vacant Dundalk managerial role, so it'll be interesting to see how that one develops. Right, it is 14 minutes past 9 on this Monday morning. It is time for the Gillette performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Tommy Rooney, you have the honour this week of taking us through the good, the bad and the grand. Where are we starting?
We're starting with the bad, as always, Owen. Unfortunately, I'm sticking Irish rugby there at number 5 in the red. It's a pity because they had such a good week the previous week. And I tuned in Saturday night and you were hoping that it'd be a competitive tie. Obviously, France are, far superior in a lot of ways in terms of their standing in the game. They're fourth in the world. And I'm not sure the gap is actually as big. Apologies about that. I'm not sure the gap is actually as big as suggested, the scoreline suggested at the weekend. I think Stacey Flood spoke about it quite a bit, about the Irish mistakes that led to French tries. They conceded 8. Alan Quinlan ran us through it there. The third 4-place playoff against Italy this weekend is massive. Speaking to Neil Tracy beforehand off air, he spoke about the fact that maybe I should be putting the Six Nations Championship here at number 5, given the fact that really, if you're talking about a competitive tournament between 6 different teams, you've got 3 tiers here. You've got England and France, who are miles ahead of everyone else. You've got Ireland and Italy up next. And then you've got Wales and Scotland at the bottom. Like, how bad must Wales and Scotland be right now if, Ireland are able to hammer Wales 45-0 and then go out and get a pacing from France? So look, it was a great week the previous week for Irish rugby. Hopefully they can get back on track and they can beat Italy this weekend and they'll be back in the green. But yeah, they're on the red this weekend.
The slightly unfortunate thing about it is that everybody was watching this game as well, and that there was expectation, wasn't it? It was an FA Cup weekend. There was no men's rugby really, or no European Cup, for example, or any clashes of that note. That this was the attention on this game, and it was huge coverage of the game. And I guess when you look at the golf and class between them, there's going to be the usual questions asked. And the thing about the semi-professional conversation, it's going to keep coming up because it's such a simple thing to talk about. Ireland will get beaten heavily by another semi-professional or a fully professional team again at some point in the future. And the first topic of conversation afterwards is going to be this exact same thing. We're going to be sick of having this conversation over the next couple of years until the IRFU actually do something about it. And you'd like to hope that it is an inevitability before they actually do something about it. I know Rory O'Connor in the Irish Independent this morning is questioning why Lynn Cantwell is involved in a rugby union abroad and isn't involved with Ireland. Where is the funding on that level of things, let alone the players? So the worry is that Irish rugby has stagnated maybe from 2014, 2015 over the last 6 years, or at the very best has stood still while other countries have moved forward. So it was a reality check for a lot of people, I think, on Saturday, and that's probably why they're in the red.
Massively so, Owen. And just to add to that, we saw them Monday morning, Bevan Parsons joined us, and she only added to the excitement that we have about this team. You've the likes of Dorothy Wall, the Irish flanker there as well. There's a couple of potential stars in this Irish side, and they deserve the investment and the backing and I suppose the interest from the public over the next couple of years. And hopefully this isn't a false dawn. We saw it with the Irish women's national team. They were so close to qualifying for big tournaments in recent years, and you'd worry whether a golden generation has just passed us by. And hopefully that isn't going to be the case with the Irish rugby team. Saturday is a massive game, make no mistake about it. Beat Italy, finish third, and you can start to build and go forward. So we're going to move on to number 4 here, and it's Dundalk and Dundalk's mess. Nathan Murphy's first question to Vinny Perth: meddling American owners, does it ring a bell? What is going on? Giovanoli quits on Sunday. Giovanoli isn't even the Dundalk manager by the time he quits. I suppose was he? But because Shane Keegan stepped down on Friday. Shane had obviously been promoted from team manager to head coach after Dundalk made the decision in January that obviously Giovanoli didn't have the required UEFA coaching badges to take over. Keegan was promoted, and it just hasn't worked out from Dundalk. They've fallen so far behind in the title race. It's just a complete mess. The club just seem to be losing I don't know, they just seem to have lost the complete spark that they developed over the last couple of years. We can see it on the screen there. They just can't peak. It's the American owners and the influence that they've had just hasn't worked. And we have a bit of audio here. Jim Magilton speaking after the game and sort of addressing the mess that has developed.
Listen, before we start, next 20, I know you're going to ask questions about what's happened over the last 24 hours. We're not going to answer any questions that, okay? So we'll make a statement in due course. There you go. So if you want to talk about the game,
just
talk about the game.
Statement, is that due course? Is that today?
No, it'll be in due course.
You'll appreciate that. Seems like a rather strange.
It's what it is. So, game or not?
Well, who picked the team today for the game?
Who do you think picked the team?
I'm asking you.
Right, game. Anyone want to talk about the game?
That is game related, Jim.
It is game related, yeah. Anyone want to talk about the game?
Well, I've asked you a question about the game.
Yeah. Well, who do you think picked the game? Who picked the team? Who do you think picked the team? The team would have been already picked, you know, I think, going into this game. Going into a game like this.
It is difficult to talk about the game when everything else is going around. That's the only problem. So, like, in terms of...
But well, listen, we will clarify all this in due course. Promise you that. We will clarify everything that you want to ask. Okay, and that'll be done in the next few days, I'm sure.
Right. Okay. That's really good audio. That's really interesting. And like, I mean, you talk about the situation there that Dundalk maybe is in a little bit of a mess at the moment. I would contend that actually, if the right appointment is made, then they'll be back on the right track pretty comprehensively. Because, like, let's not forget the ridicule that the Giovagnoli appointment was met with, and then the subsequent surprise when they ended up qualifying for the Europa League group stages. And like, it clearly speaks to the quality that they have in the squad. I know obviously there's been plenty of movement in the off season since last year, but like, there's still quality there. And I think Vinny Perth touched on that he just doesn't understand why people think that this is a basket case of a club to go into. It'll be very interesting to see what Shane Keegan has to say, maybe if Giovagnoli speaks over the next few weeks, just to get a bit of an insight as to what actually happened over the last little while, because Dundalk was the story before the League of Ireland season kicked off as well. Giovagnoli obviously not a fully qualified coach. Shane Keegan stepped in, and famously Dundalk got slap on the wrist from UEFA last year when Giovagnoli snuck into one of the technical areas. So this has been a long rumbling thing, and if Jim Magilton is saying there that there's going to be clarity in due course, I'll be interested to see what that is.
Yeah, 100%. And that Magilton audio there was a smashing level of narkiness throughout that whole interview. You know, he was on the defence a little bit, and it reminded me a little bit of, and I'm really disappointed myself that I haven't got the audio right now, but of a certain League of Ireland manager and his electrician comments around the floodlights. I'm not an electrician, so we might take that out later in the week. Go check out the Sports Illustrated version of that if you want. Yeah, so Dundalk, look, we all know how fickle a thing momentum is in football, and the right appointment, as you said, it could switch. Momentum in sport is just something so fickle. Okay, into the orange. This was a tight one this week, the Grand. And we've gone for Stephen Kenny and the Irish Premier League players. So Sheffield United got relegated at the weekend. We knew it was coming. It's a big blow for Irish football because we're losing Enda Stevens and John Egan from playing Premier League football week in, week out. Like, that was such a positive for Ireland over the last couple of years, even especially when McGoldrick was playing Premier League football and he was leading the line for Ireland. But losing Egan and Stevens is a big blow for Ireland. Who knows how long Seamus Coleman has left playing Premier League football? I'm not going to doubt the man. He obviously made a big impact when he came off the bench at the weekend. But like, we don't even have Matt Doherty competing with Shamey at the moment for that right back berth. The likelihood is West Brom are going to go down, so we're going to lose Darragh O'Shea and Callum Robinson. Now, hopefully, Big Sam can pull off a miraculous escape, because that'd be good for us. That'd be good for Irish football. And I suppose Norwich City have been promoted, and Adam Ida and Andrew Mbabadeli are, you know, playing bits and pieces for Norwich at the minute. I don't know, is it a good thing that Norwich has gone up for Stephen Kenny and for Ireland? Like, would it be better if Adam Ida had a year of championship football under his belt next year? And the same for Mbabadeli. Is he ready to play Premier League football? I don't know. He's obviously impressed so much in the last couple of weeks, but is he going to get a chance in the summer? Who knows? Like, genuinely, who knows? And like, Owen, like,
yeah,
the reason I have Irish football in the orange is that if the European Super League takes off and all these players are banned from international football, surely we're going to qualify for a World Cup then, right?
Well,
surely.
what's going to happen is if there's a European Super League, this golden generation is actually going to arrive, and it'll be just our luck that Ireland will have like 11 world-class players. Troy Parrott's going to end up becoming Harry Kane. Darragh O'Shea is going to end up becoming Rio Ferdinand. Bamidele is going to end up becoming Nemanja Vidic. And they're all going to end up joining Super League clubs, and then they'll all be taken away from Ireland. That will be just the Irish luck for that to happen. Like I think you're right to put Ireland into the orange here. I think that you're right probably about Ida maybe. Is he going to get enough minutes as a Premier League striker next season? I think you can use that argument though for the West Brom and the Sheffield United lads. Now, it hasn't been a problem for the Sheffield United players. They've, like Stevens and Egan are in their starting team, no questions asked. But maybe for Callum Robinson, he gets maybe more goals and he gets more confidence, and he'll be playing against teams like Chelsea aren't getting relegated, so maybe he's not going to score against anybody, but he'll probably have a better chance of scoring against other opposition as well. And like when it comes to Bamidele and his arrival into the Premier League, there's a few comparisons between himself and Darragh O'Shea. That's, the late arrival into a first team right before promotion was notable. I know Darragh O'Shea probably came in quite early in that season and Slaven Bilic loved him. And Darragh O'Shea is older as well. I mean, like, he was 2021 when he was getting promoted, whereas Bamidele is 18 years of age at this point. So it's still very soon, and as you say, for a Premier League striker, probably a little bit too soon.
Yeah, 100%.
Or centre-back, I should say.
Centre-back, sorry, yeah, centre-back, 100%. Right, into the green, and these were possibly the easiest decisions to make all week. Maybe the order of it was kind of tight, but number 2, Orla O'Dwyer. Especially after Rachel Blackmore's antics last week and over the last month, I think it's safe to say that of all the Mount Rushmores, Tipperary needs a facelift. Orla O'Dwyer has now become the second Irish player ever to win the AFLW medal. Ailish Considine won it before a couple of years ago. The Clare player playing with the Adelaide Crows, they were beaten at the weekend by the Brisbane Lions. And it's not like O'Dwyer just had a role on the team, on the bench, coming on. She was a key player for the Brisbane Lions, and she's developed a serious amount in terms of an AFL prospect over the last 6 months or so, ever since she went out during the middle of the championship last year in October 2020. It's her second year playing AFL, but she's really asserted herself this year. She, she led the way with disposals. She had 16. She had 6 tackles. She set up a goal. She had an exceptional game, and I think that in terms of the 14 Irish players that went out this year, most of them, barring a couple of terrible injuries, Sinead Goldrick was taken out with a really bad injury. Breach Stack obviously missed out with a really bad injury. The Irish players had a huge impact on the AFLW this year, and it just shows the potential that's there for young Irish athletes coming up to go over there and make a career of themselves. Like, whatever about the reluctance for some counties to put their men's players forward to go play AFL, like, I don't know, I've always disagreed with that. I think it's a huge opportunity to play professional sport. Like, I'd love to have Conor Nash back playing football in Meath. I'd love to have him leading the line in midfield and Keane McBride back playing. But, like, everyone dreams of playing professional sport. And the doors that are open there now through the likes of different agencies with cross-coders and the various parties that are involved in plucking the Irish stars and bringing them over, it's just a huge potential for Irish players to dream and to grow and develop as sports people. You look at Sarah Rowe and Aisling Sheridan, who went from living together in DCU to now going over and playing for Collingwood, and they're beaten in the semi-finals or the pre-final by Brisbane Lions. And I don't know, it's class to see the Irish stars that are doing so well over there. Obviously, we're all jealous of all of our friends and family who are over in Australia at the minute and they're living life. But there was a crowd. The crowds were in, and it was a great occasion. And yeah, O'Dwyer had a serious impact at the weekend.
Oh, I'm telling you, the people who went down to actually play AFLW during this pandemic have won at life in a way that people just haven't won at life in the past. And then Orla O'Dwyer obviously is winning at life even more than the other people who are winning at life. So the second ever Irish woman to win the championship, 38-20, wasn't it, in front of 22,000 people at the weekend, which is just obviously the best part of all of this, getting to watch fans.
Is Ty Kennelly still the only Irish man to win the Premiership medal? Like Zach Toohey and Mark O'Connor, they lost the final 2 years ago. I think Kennelly is still the only man. So there's only 3 then.
You are putting me on the spot.
I probably shouldn't have landed there in the spot, but I think it is only the 3. And then number 1, Leona Maguire. You know, Shane Lowry would have caught the eye over the weekend. He had another top 10 finish after following up on his Masters win, but Leona Maguire finished second. She pocketed 125,000, more than doubled her winnings for the year so far. It's her first ever year on the tour, her first full season on the tour, sorry. And yeah, just an exceptional finish. Tied for second. And, you know, talking about giving the Tipperary Mount Rushmore a facelift, Paul Fitzpatrick of the Anglo-Celt had Leona Maguire on the Cavan one. He got a bit of stick for it at the time, but she is beginning to assert herself now on the world stage. Like, she was up against the best golfers in the world, and she was a couple of shots back off the winner. But you know, what a you know win, or what a success for her at the weekend. Like, that's a huge amount of money to keep her going throughout the season. So, congrats to Leona Maguire. She is the winner of this week's performance ranking after tying second on the LPGA Tour.
Yeah, it was John Joe O'Reilly who suffered at the hands of Leona Maguire on the Cavan Mount Rushmore. Dave McIntyre had O'Reilly up on the Mount Rushmore, and Fitzpatrick, as you say, ruthlessly took him off to put up Leona Maguire, and I think he's been vindicated here. And
there was no doubt in that. Paul was talking about having Leona there as one of his number one picks straight away, so he was spot on.
And what a future as well for her career as well, coming down the tracks. Right, that is this week's performance rankings.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
Just to go through some of your audience suggestions actually before we wrap up this morning. Mark Waters said the Super 12 should have been in there in the red because they're all a shower. Dom said Gary Neville for that rant in the green. Liam said Iheanacho in the green for the most underrated foreign player in England right now. I like that shout. Andrew said stick the Premier League Big Six in the red. Yasin said the traditional Big Six were trying to privatise elite level football by making it a closed shop. Claff, probably a Manchester United fan, suggests Cavani into the green. And Jim says, as a Munster fan, do we have to watch Leinster hammer us again this weekend? So he's already putting Munster into the red in the performance rankings. But the competition winner this week is Sean Lyons. So congratulations to Sean Lyons. He said every team joining the Super League should be in the red because it's a ridiculous performance by any football club. Congratulations, Sean. You are the winner of a Gillette starter pack this morning on OTB AM. Right, it is 31 minutes past 9. You have been watching OTB AM. It's been live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We are going to play a little bit now of Brian Kerr, and after we hear from Brian Kerr reacting to yesterday's football, we also hear a bit from Alison Miller on Ireland's defeat to France. Enjoy.
It finished Arsenal 1, Fulham 1 at the Emirates Stadium, Brian, and two controversial moments in that second half that led to the two goals. We go to Arsenal's first. Rob Holding standing on the edge of the 6-yard box, perhaps obstructing the view of Areola, the Fulham goalkeeper. But then Kedia came in at the far post, stabs it home to level the match. Do you think the VAR made the right decision in allowing the goal to stand?
I think as the rules are generally interpreted, they probably did. But from my point of view, and I'm sure Scott Parker felt the same, I thought Holding's position would have affected the goalkeeper Areola's ability to make the save. I mean, it was an excellent save, but it affected his ability on how far he got the ball away from the goal. I think there was a Fulham player in the direct path of the ball. Maybe the ball went to his right hand side. I think Holding was in the position where the goalkeeper was certainly being affected by his presence because he was so close. So for me, I know the interpretation, but I don't think it's correct. I think that in that situation, the benefit should go towards the defender and not the attacker, and it should have been disallowed. But I'm not surprised of what the interpretation was. And if you look at it overall, Arsenal probably deserved a draw. Fulham played well enough as a defensive side, didn't do an awful lot with the ball, didn't really make any clear-cut chances in the match, got a lucky penalty. Arsenal didn't create many chances either. So I don't think either side deserved to win the match. It's just a bit unfortunate from Fulham's point of view in that they're involved in the battle and scrap to try and stay up. I don't think it'd be good enough anyway.
Yeah, because we'll come back to Arsenal in a moment, but looking at that Fulham team and the way they've played across the whole season, it's looking pretty much now that they're doomed for relegation. It's hard to see how they'll fight back at the time we speak now. Of course, Burnley have to play Manchester United. They could lose that game. Gives them a little bit of faint hope, perhaps. But across the season, looking at Fulham's performances, they haven't scored a lot of goals. They haven't got a regular goal scorer. They don't really deserve to stay up, would you say?
Well, the teams that finish in the bottom three don't usually deserve. There's very little, very few times after when you look and say, oh, they were very unlucky. If someone goes down on goal difference or narrowly by a point, you might say they were very unlucky. A lot of injuries or bad decisions against them on the last day. But overall, you have plenty of time over a 38-match league to get what you deserve. I mean, Fulham didn't start the season well. I think they'd only one victory in the first 10 games. And it took a long time for them to get going. I think they adjusted their style of play. Initially, they were trying to play a more, let's say, exotic style. They were trying to play a more adventurous, attacking style of play. Eventually, Scott Parker decided to change it round, got some players in. Window was still open, was able to get some very good loan players in who have improved them and helped them to get some good results. And there was a stage where you're saying, well, Fulham could do it, but now they've fallen off the last few games. Narrow defeats, and I think the Wolves one was a big result, a 90-minute goal by Traore, a bit of a wonder goal from a strange position in injury time to lose 1-0 to Wolves. That was a big result against them. But, you know, overall, you look at that situation, what, they're on 26 points, they're gone. It's not going to be enough. They need to get too many points, get one today. They need to get 3 today. And they're running out of games now. And you said about goals. The goals, haven't scored enough goals. I think the top scorer is only on 4, you know, and that says something about it as well. But I think they will be in good situation to regroup if they go down and have a good season next season and come back up. I mean, they come back up from winning the playoffs last season. They finished in 4th place. So, but I think they'll be in better circumstances if they go down this time. The manager will be a better manager, more experienced manager. He'll know the players better. He'll know what's required in the championship even more than he did last time. And he'll have a better evaluation of his squad based on how they performed this season.
It's interesting you say that because, of course, Scott Parker took over when Fulham were really doomed for relegation the last time from the Premier League, and I don't think, he wasn't really expected to stay up. But as you say, he came straight back up from the Championship, takes him into the Premier League. Not such a great season this season. Just listening to some Fulham supporters on podcasts and that kind of thing, there seems to be a bit of a divide between supporters at the moment, whether they should stick with Scott Parker or whether they should look to another manager. But from what you're saying there, you think that they should stick with Scott Parker?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, Fulham have made some very strange choices in recent years when they've been in trouble. I'm thinking particularly of Felix Magath, who I thought was a very strange one at the time, and from conversations I've had with 1 or 2 players who were there, it was quite a strange existence working under him as players. But they have they've been a bit of an up and down team for several years. Their best period was probably under Roy Hodgson, who did really well for them. They got to UEFA
Europa League final. UEFA Cup final, sorry.
UEFA Cup final as it was then, and performed extraordinarily well that season, and were very good, earned a place in that competition, of course, and then went on so far actually went to the final. So I think Scott Parker has done a good, steady job. As you said, he wasn't going to rescue them last season. This season and the end of last season, the season before last season, he did a good job to get them up. The end of last season and this season have been unique in many ways in modern football, in the fact that there have been no crowds at the games. Clubs are obviously struggling financially. They've had to adapt to all sorts of circumstances, adapt to training under strange circumstances, preparing for matches in difficult situations. So I'd give everyone a bit of a free pass to a degree, but I think Scott Parker has done all right with what he's had. I don't think if Jurgen Klopp or Guardiola were managing Fulham this season, they would have done miles better with the squad of players they had. So I think he deserves another go at it, by all means.
Arsenal are looking forward to that Europa League semi-final against Villarreal. Their old coach, Unai Emery, in charge of the Spanish side, of course. They've got Everton next before that game. And I was saying to you off microphone, Brian, that I feel that in these kind of situations, you want to keep getting positive results. Like having a result today against a relegation-threatened side isn't going to help Arsenal and their confidence going into such a big match. And we know how big it is because they're facing no European football for the first time since 95-96 season if they don't qualify through the Europa League. So what's your take on the result today and how that might affect them going into that semi-final?
Well, I think the result today puts even more emphasis on the Europa League for them. I mean, I've been saying this for a long time. Realistically, the best route to European football is through the Europa League this year. Be it that, if they could win the Europa League, that Champions League place is still there. But otherwise, they don't look like they're going to make the Europa League positions. And losing 2 points today has probably extended the danger of that not happening. There's a few clubs ahead of them who are all in mixed enough form. Liverpool, Everton, Spurs. None of them playing spectacularly well either. But I think the Villarreal game is going to be a massive game for them. They've known that for a while. I think their emphasis has been on that competition to a degree, because I think the manager realised that for a while back that was going to be a struggle to make the Champions League.
Was he right?
Oh yeah. David, I mean, that's the 13th. They've lost 12 games. It was almost their 13th defeat of the season, but 12 defeats in the Premier League out of 33 games or 32 games is already too many. It shows a team who are brittle, inconsistent, and who concede too many goals. They've not conceded as many goals this season they have in previous season, but they've still lost too many matches. So the performances, they were fortunate enough against Benfica. They had to wake up late on the game to rescue that match when they were 2-1 down in the home game, and needed 2 late goals from Tierney and Aubameyang to get them through. They won that match 3-2. Didn't play spectacularly well against Olympiacos either. They won the away game 3-1. Late goal by Elneny gave them a little bit of space with the 3-1 lead. 3 away goals, of course. Then they lost the home game 1-0. So, it was touch and go against Slavia Prague. The home game again 1-1. Went to Prague in midweek and put on one of their best performances of the season to win the match 4-0 on Thursday night. But then you go to today and another wishy-washy performance, I'd call it. So it'll be tough one for them. Villarreal 7th in the league, not having a brilliant season. They're doing okay. They've got some experienced players and a manager who knows Arsenal, knows the players inside out. Wouldn't know the young players that well because he didn't play them. They were only starting to come through at that stage.
Will that go against them though? And this might sound like the words of somebody who, well, I obviously haven't managed Brian, but you'd have better experience. When you come up against a team that you maybe have a little bit of a bad history with, that you're more determined.
There's no doubt about that, Stephen. Yeah, I mean, I never had it because I never managed anyone else. I never managed against Pats. I left Pats and I kind of always felt that in my head. I'd had 10 years there. They've been so good to me. Yeah. The supporters were always very loyal to me, whether we were winning or losing. And, in my head, I always have had that one. So I can't talk about that, but I did occasionally have games against clubs that I probably felt a certain amount of ill will against. Maybe they pinched players off me in the transfer market that I didn't want to go, and that we were underpaid for them when we went to tribunals on them, and I would have been very disappointed and annoyed about that, and I'd have been probably I've been probably more wound up in the preparation in the week before that game than I would against some other clubs, and that it used to help. It helped me to get the players more focused on what was at stake. I would imagine that Unai Emery would feel a bit the same against Arsenal, but it's a different level. He's an experienced manager. Didn't go great for him overall with Arsenal. He had a difficulty in his communication skills. He never got a massive grip of the English language. I think despite his best efforts, I think he's a good guy, but he was never readily accepted by Arsenal supporters. He wasn't considered one of their own or one of them or one of our great past players, and he was up against it. But even
the English media, I think, also.
Yeah, they did. But look, in this competition, he's an outstanding record. 3 in a row with Sevilla. Sevilla won the 3 in a row. He's in this competition. He's considered as the maestro when it comes to Europa League and been able to win it. So Arsenal, watch out against Villarreal. It won't be easy.
Certainly not. Briefly to ask you about Manchester City, beaten yesterday in the FA Cup semi-final by Chelsea. Is that the kind of result that can then cause them to trip up in the other competitions they're left in, the League Cup, Premier League and Champions League?
Well, when people were saying, well, it's on for Manchester City, they're the most outstanding team we've seen around Europe for many, many years, I would have always, in my head, been saying, hold on here, wait till you get to the business end of the season. It'll be, you can have a bad day, you can stumble. Not everyone's going to lie down, as a lot of teams have, when you want to win the cup competitions. You can't stop them winning the league. They're going to win the league anyway. But when it comes to the match, I mean, they play Spurs in the final. Spurs not having a very good season, but a lot of people would say Spurs can make it very awkward and win the match. We saw what can happen yesterday. He plays Chelsea. He rotated the team, left out 7 or 8 players that played in the Champions League midweek. Chelsea don't want to lose in the cup. The new manager wants to win trophies, knows the way it works at Chelsea. If you're not winning trophies, you'll be sacked. Even if you are winning trophies, you might be sacked, because if you don't win the main one, don't win the league, or you don't win the Champions League, you'll probably be sacked as well. So he's saying, well, I might as well give it a go, try and win the cup. He puts out a very strong team, well set up, made it very awkward for them. And we saw chinks in Manchester City, similar to the chinks we saw against Leeds in the last league game when they lost to Leeds United. They were down to 10 men for a long time, since the first half of the match. So, suddenly there's doubts there. They may not win. Well, they certainly won't win 4 competitions. They mightn't win 3. They mightn't win 2. We might be seeing, but it'd been interesting finish the season, that's for sure.
Makes it exciting. And just to finish then, Brian, look, we're light in detail at the moment because all the news about the changes to European football happened while we were on duty commentating on that game. But I suppose in a more general sense, because a lot of these details have been floating around for a while now, where there was talks of a breakaway Super League involving Premier League clubs, Italian clubs, Spanish clubs. There was talk of changing the Champions League format. This all to me seems to me, even if just look at the Champions League format, UEFA kind of moving the goalposts to kind of help out the top European clubs who we know have all mismanaged their finances. The likes of Manchester United, Barcelona, Real Madrid. Like, if you're a small club in Europe trying to make your way in European football, it just looks like downright unfair moves being made by UEFA to help these clubs out who have mismanaged their finances. It just doesn't seem fair.
I don't think it's UEFA trying to help out those top clubs. I think the UEFA are over a barrel with those top clubs, saying to them, if you don't go with what we want, we'll go and do it ourselves. Now, ultimately, they can't stop them from having their own league and playing against each other. Somebody has got to pass it and say, all right, go ahead, you can play your matches. But what UEFA cannot do is they can't stop them going their own way in some way. They can stop them playing in their domestic tournaments, and their national associations could stop that happening. The Premier League could stop, say, the clubs who it seems are involved in this: Manchester City, Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Spurs. They could stop them playing the Premier League, but what would the Premier League be like without them? So it's a very delicate situation for the Premier League, and it's a very delicate situation for UEFA. So UEFA have got to try and find some compromise, and that's what we've seen. They'd come to agree that compromise with the agreement to have a 36-team Champions League of some description. But maybe now that's all going to be thrown into disarray. We just have to wait and see what develops over the next week, over the next few weeks. But it's not a very nice situation for the domestic leagues if the big teams are all going to go off and do their own thing, particularly, the major, like if you take PSG out of the French league, you take Juventus out of the Italian league, maybe Inter and Milan. If you take Bayern Munich out of the German league, but particularly the Premier League, if you take 5 or 6 teams out of that, what sort of a league would that be? It'll be a totally different league, won't have the same income, won't have the same strength in the marketplace. The TV rights will go to the TV money will go to the strongest league as it currently is. That's the Champions League and the Premier League. But changing times ahead, it seems.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Stephen.
Alison, a disappointing end here today in Ireland's Six Nation campaign in association with Guinness. They'd finished France 56, Ireland 15, and not a great day out for them.
No, disappointing for the Irish girls. Obviously, they had huge confidence coming into the game. Talked about potential shock being on the cards, and obviously, a comprehensive victory for the French team there, who were, really dominant in all areas of the pitch, really. But Ireland got off to quite a good start and had a spirited start to the game. They got a penalty, they defended well, and I think when France got into their groove, then there was really no stopping them.
Let's take a look at Ireland first here. It was a bit scrappy from them, not getting on much ball.
Yeah, I suppose, the challenge posed last week was Wales, and then you come up against such a physically imposing team like France. Like, they're so much more physical than a lot of teams in the Six Nations. They're huge tacklers, they're very defensively, very, very well organised. So, when Ireland were carrying, they weren't getting the same gain line as they would have got last weekend against Wales. And both physically then, both in attack and defence, Ireland were probably dominated physically by that huge French pack and by their backline.
You did mention the difference in physicality here today between both sides.
Yeah, I suppose if you just even look at the two teams, if you look at them, the size is a huge difference. The French pack, are very big in stature, very strong. Even the French backs, they're quite strong and they're physical looking. So there is a huge difference in the physicality, which kind of showed then as the game went on.
Some massive hits some of those players took today.
Yeah, certainly there were some big hits in there.
Sore bodies tomorrow?
There will be sore bodies tomorrow, yeah. But I think that, playing the French over the years, they were always really, really good tacklers. They're always physical. There's one thing that they can do is tackle, and tackle well.
With Ireland, was there signs of some positive signs today for you, Alison?
Yeah, I think they played some really nice phases, and they looked like they were, retaining the ball well. Their driving maul was really good. Their rolling maul, they got 2 tries off it. So I think that was a positive. When they did get down to those areas, they got 2 tries from it. Mema Houben and Quinlan Maloney, both hookers actually. And it was good that they actually got a try when there were 14 men down. Now they lost 2 players within the game, so they were playing, that spell with 2 players down at different times. But yeah, I thought Emer Considine had a very good game at full back defensively. There was a lot of times she was had to make last man tackles, and it was just one-on-one, and she made them, and she stopped certain tries. I also thought Stacey Flood came on, made an impact, and yes, there was some positives from that, I thought. Yeah, definitely.
You mentioned Emer just a few moments ago, and I think that, she really did stop them conceding some more tries, and she was really important.
Yeah, I think Emer, to me, is one of the most improved players since her debut in 2017. She just gets better and better and gets more physical. So her defence has become a really strong part of her game. She's becoming physical, she tracks the play well, and she's able to make those tackles. And we saw her stopping, I'd say maybe 2 or 3 certain tries really, and I know they scored the next phase or whatever it was, but you did really well defensively.
And the French, looking at them, they played some amazing rugby today.
Oh, they are a class act, and from 1 to 23 there really is no weakness. When you look at the players they had on the bench, they had Pauline Bordeaux on the bench, who is absolutely a class act when she came on. Just her innovativeness in around the ruck to release players, such a variety to her game. Yurvron Romain Ménager, who came on and scored a try, and just have so much depth that they're, they could probably field a different combination. And it's very for the coach there, for the French coach, I'm sure she's probably used the last 2 games to figure out who her best 15 are, but strong competition there from all those French 23.
What about Boulard and Bougard together? They're dangerous.
Yeah, to me they're just really, really good wingers, because the elusiveness of it. I think Bougard is quite an elusive winger. She's quite fast. She's got good kicking skills as well to bring to her game. She's elusive. She's very, very fast. I think she's got quite a long range stride that we probably don't. She doesn't look like she's going as actually fast as she is. And Bane is something else. I think she's probably the most unrated wing that's probably not talked about, like maybe some other wingers in the championship. That she is so hard to deal with. She scored some unbelievable tries against England in the autumn internationals, and she's very elusive. She's very physical. You saw her in defence. So unfortunately for Ireland, the French dealt with Bavine Parsons well when she got the ball. They dealt with her very well. I suppose she probably hasn't come up maybe against a strong defensive winger. Obviously we would have liked to got a lot more ball to her in a lot more space, which obviously then she can do more with it. And the same with Amy Lee Murphy-Crowe. She's a speedster, but we might have got her the ball once or twice in not so much space. So the two of our main potent attacking threats were dealt really well with today by the French, and I'm sure they were what is the word looking for? They were putting, they kept an eye on them and they were trying to target them not to get the ball to them, because they would be, as I said, Ireland's biggest threats. And unfortunately, we didn't get the ball enough to them.
Last week, I think Ireland really showed up against them, and then this week they were facing a different beast in France. And it probably poses the question of the professionalism that the France team would have compared to Ireland. And was that the difference here today?
Yeah, I suppose it's the Six Nations now. It shows there's different tiers to it. Ireland obviously bet Wales 45-0 last week, and then today the 41-point difference then shows the difference between France then and Ireland. So you've got these different tiers of, I won't say ability, because it's not ability. Those Irish girls are all full of ability, but they're working at a different, they're different capacity than this French team. They're all working full-time jobs. They're managing their careers, and they're giving up a lot, and they're early mornings, late nights, and a lot of driving. So it probably is the difference. I think John and Air asked me, what's the difference between the two teams really, and I said, look, we probably won't know till the full time score, but Ireland will be disappointed, but there were some good aspects to their play, and I think if they've improved definitely since 2018, 2019, they were probably really, really disappointing years for Irish women's rugby. So look, it's not all doom and gloom. 2020 was a great year, and they won their 3 home games. This year, obviously, they're not getting to play as many games because of the format of the championship, but there definitely is signs of improvement, but probably a big gap between the Frances and the England of the Six Nations.
Well, what now for Ireland? They were so confident last weekend and the week before. It's so un-Irish of us to be that confident. Do you think it'll take a bit of a knock after today?
Yeah, I'd imagine so. If you're confident and you're talking about creating a shock, and you do believe in it. It's not that you're saying it cheaply. It's just something you firmly believe because you've put the work in. So yeah, I'd imagine they'll be disappointed. But now for Ireland, they have to look on to the next game, and that is a big thing for them, because they have another game now. And more importantly, not that the Six Nations isn't important, it is so important, but Ireland have these World Cup qualifiers that they need to nail down and qualify for that World Cup. So what they'll be looking for now is their next game that they play is to get a good performance, gain more confidence, that when they do play those qualifiers, whenever they are going to be scheduled, they'll be put off a few times, that Ireland can go into those qualifiers and perform and qualify for the World Cup. So they have loads to look forward to. There is loads of improvement. I was impressed with some of the subs that came on today, really made an impact. As I said, Stacey Flood, I thought she did really well, really good distribution, and she got some lovely turnovers actually for a 10, nearly like a back rower.
What have you made of the sevens coming in? They seem to have had a positive impact. Everyone's talking about the amount of camps they've had all together. They're gelling well as a team. I mean, all positive. There is positive signs there.
Yeah, and I suppose, I was a former sevens player myself and played 15s, and I think the issue isn't their ability, it never is. I think it's just, previously maybe they were coming in for a game or two and they might have been only in a few camps, and I think that's probably problematic for team cohesion, for performance of different players getting used to each other. Like if someone's only coming in at the end or at the start of Six Nations for maybe a game or two, you're not used to them, or you don't know how they play, their style of play, and you're not on the same page. But where they've been fully immersed this year, and it just shows that makes a difference. It makes a difference to the whole squad, but it makes a difference to those sevens players, that they can actually get the best out of themselves, that they are used to the systems, that they're used to certain moves, that they're on the same page as the girls. And we can see then that when that's done, and when it's done in the right way, it can be really positive and they can add a huge benefit to the team. So that's great to see those girls getting their first cap. And someone like Eve Higgins, I would have loved to have capped her. I said to her, sent her a good luck text a few weeks ago. I was like, I would have capped her myself 4 years ago. She was out there. So it's great to see the likes of her and Stacey and Emily Lane, getting their first caps. And performing well, and they'll add to the team going forward, especially for these qualifiers.
What can Ireland learn from a team like playing France? There's a lot that they can take from this now.
Yeah, I suppose even in that first half, their French women are very like their French men. They don't actually need a lot of possession. So on, turnover ball, they will kill you. They'll just, if you give them cheap possession, or you knock on, or you turn the ball over, fumble a ball. We saw Bevan Parsons had a really good run. It was probably one of the few good runs that she kind of leg drived and broke a tackle, but unfortunately she kind of spilled the ball in contact, and then France just picked it up and they scored a try straight off it. So they're so dangerous. So when you're playing a team like that, you have to cut the errors, you have to try and control the game. It's easier said than done when they're so dominant, but your scrum, like our scrum, came under a lot of pressure today. It was very good at times, but and I know a winger talking about scrums is never great, but but they put our scrum under huge pressure. So it's trying to, improve our scrum, because you saw last week we had a great platform for our backs to attack, and Bevan Parsons didn't get a try off first phase, but today, we're coming under a lot more pressure. So it's just continuing on the journey. They are working hard, up in their S&C, up in their physicality, and hopefully, with COVID, they can actually get more games. Hopefully they can get on internationals, summer tours, get playing more, all those kind of things that help. And as much as the 20 camps have really benefited this team, it's also, you can see obviously there's parts of their game that need work, and you probably only learn these things about yourself the more you're playing. So yes, they've had internal games against each other, but it's really games like this that you go, okay, A, B and C, we need to work on those different things and really improve. But there was positive performances. As I said, Laois woman Emma Hooban got a try. I coached her when she was 12, so it's good to see her getting on the scoreboard. I'm not sure if it's her first try for Ireland, but I think set pieces is definitely important when you're playing a team like this, and your defence. We saw great line speed last week. Wales did not have an inch, but when you're playing such a dominant team with huge physicality, they're just getting over the gain line, coming in waves and waves, and that is hard to defend. So keep improving our defensive structures, and the type of ways that we defend will be important. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks for joining us today. It was great to see the girls in action finally.
Yeah, it was great, and I'm sure we'd love to see them playing more games, and hopefully when this COVID goes away, hopefully we'll see this team in action more.
Thanks, Alison.
No problem.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved